Hello everyone, today we will learn about another case. The case of Kaytlin Root. Sometimes, criminals who look for victims just for fun or out of a desire to kill. In the state of Missouri, USA, there is a town called St. Joseph. This is a small town with many parks, museums, and other attractions, as well as a large number of running tracks and walking paths in one of the parks called Krug. On Sunday, October 16, 2016, a man went out jogging. Closer to the end of the trail, the man noticed something suspicious on the path. Initially, he thought it was a mannequin because Halloween is coming soon. So, he calmly continued to run past it. When he reached the object, however, he noticed blood on it. At first, he simply ran past, but something alerted him and made him turn back. The mannequin suspiciously resembled the body of a girl. There was a hole in her chest. She was lying on the asphalt without clothes, in a pool of blood. The frightened witness called 911 for help. Even when he contacted the dispatcher, he was not sure whether it was a mannequin or not. This story unfolded in mid-October, 2 weeks before Halloween, when one could encounter various oddities. Perhaps it was a Halloween prank or some kind of decoration for the holiday. When the police arrived at the scene to investigate, they confirmed the witness's worst fears. It was indeed the body of a girl. The criminal did not even bother to hide the traces of his crime. Just a meter away, clothes were found, which had been neatly cut off. Additionally, the girl's false nails were scattered around the body, indicating that she had desperately resisted and that her nails had been damaged in the struggle. During their examination, forensic scientists were unable to find any identification documents for the girl. She had no personal belongings, means of communication, or the weapon used in the crime. To make initial conclusions, it was crucial to determine who the victim of this brutal massacre was. The only clue that could help the police was a T-shirt she wore. It had an inscription indicating that she was a student at Central High School, graduating in 2017. It was assumed she was a high school student preparing to receive her diploma the following year. The fingerprints of the victim were collected, but no matches were found in the national database. This was not surprising. Given the approximate age of the victim, it was unlikely she had a criminal record. The authorities were forced to close the park to visitors for the next 24 hours to continue inspecting the area. A larger-scale operation was launched, involving many more law enforcement officers, and results came quickly. They were able to find broken parts of a mobile phone, which had been disassembled and scattered around the area. Over the next few days, the communication device was collected and completely restored. Meanwhile, the forensic expert performed an autopsy on the body, revealing that the girl had been brutally tortured before her death. Her throat had been cut twice, but that was not the cause of her death. She had received several stab wounds from an object similar to a knife, one of which had pierced her liver and caused fatal bleeding. Without emergency assistance, a cut throat could also have killed her. There were signs of prolonged strangulation on her face, which complicated the determination of exactly what had occurred. According to the forensic expert, the strangulation may have involved something like a long piece of fabric. Simultaneously, several officers visited the school indicated on the girl's T-shirt to identify any missing high school girls. At the school, the police talked to the principal and teachers, showed them photographs of the unidentified victim. The girl was recognized. Her name was Kaytlin Root. She had studied there for some time before switching to homeschool. Kaytlin was born on November 11, 1998, into a large family with 5 sisters and 5 brothers. She was very positive, artistic, and funny, and loved singing, dancing, walking in the fresh air. Her last hobby was hunting for Pokemon in the park, which was very popular at the time. It was unclear what attracted her to Krug Park, located in another area of the city that was less known to her. It was beautiful and quiet, a favorite place for many runners until this tragedy occurred. However, there were some remote and gloomy spots where locals rarely ventured. That is where Kaytlin's body was discovered. At school, Kaytlin's close friends were devastated by her loss, and they willingly cooperated with the investigation. When the Root family was informed that the body of their missing daughter had been found, everyone was heartbroken. They desperately wanted to find who had so cruelly taken the life of a girl just 3 weeks shy of her 18th birthday. Despite her close relationship with the family, at the time of the incident, Kaytlin did not live with them. She had grown up and wanted more independence, freedom, so she was temporarily staying with her best friend, who lived with her grandmother. The whole group had to maintain constant contact, but nothing suspicious was noticed. The police visited this house to speak with all its residents. In fact, the family with whom Kaytlin was living at the time noticed her disappearance and contacted the police. Upon identification, the police talked to Kaytlin's friend's family and finally received the first valuable clue. According to Kaytlin's friend's mother, a few days before the crime, Kaytlin had an online argument with her boyfriend. She was planning to break up with him, but the situation escalated into a big fight. The woman reported that their last meeting ended in a confrontation, after which Kaytlin was left with a bruise. This mark was also found during the autopsy. All this gave the police their first suspect, whom they decided to interview. They were not able to find him right away, but several of Kaytlin's boyfriend's friends responded. None of them believed that Kaytlin's boyfriend could physically harm Kaytlin, as he was not prone to aggression or violence. No one had noticed anything like that about him before. However, the police wanted to speak with him in person. Witnesses were also found who reported seeing his car, which allegedly stopped near Krug Park late in the evening. All this strengthened the suspicion against him. Finally, the police met with Kaytlin's boyfriend. The evidence of his involvement began to mount, as there were numerous marks on his body and arms, minor wounds resembling scratches. He attributed these to branches while riding a motorcycle. He stated that he met with Kaytlin, and the last time they saw each other was on Thursday, a few days before the murder. On that day, a friend of his also joined them. Everything seemed fine, and according to him, Kaytlin spent a lot of time with them, with no conflicts occurring. Therefore, he found it very unpleasant to receive a call 2 days after this meeting from an unknown person who accused him of beating women. This voice sounded threatening and offered to meet to confront him about what he had done to Kaytlin. The caller then hung up. Kaytlin's boyfriend didn't understand that there was a deeper implication behind this. Despite there being no conflicts between them, he was surprised when Kaytlin later accused him of breaking her nose. After that, she hung up and ignored his calls. He considered any accusations of aggression and cruelty, especially towards his girlfriend, to be absurd. Afterward, Kaytlin's boyfriend published several posts on his social media, suggesting that Kaytlin had convinced her friends to turn against him. He couldn't understand the reasons behind it but felt he didn't have time to figure out the details. Notably, he provided an alibi for almost the entire Saturday and Sunday, having visited several friends, all of which were confirmed, leaving no time window sufficient for an attack. Despite the suspicion, nothing significant could be obtained against him, except for the name of another potential suspect. Kaytlin's boyfriend told the detectives about Adam, who, according to Kaytlin, had been literally obsessed with her. He behaved anxiously to such an extent that he began to stalk her, sending letters with ambiguous content and insinuating that he might take his own life if she didn't want to meet him. Before the crime, the police learned that Adam communicated with his best friend on social media on October 15th at around 8 p.m., which was the last time he contacted her. To the surprise of the police, this best friend turned out to be Kaytlin. Adam had added her to his list of close friends, probably to avoid drawing attention to his unhealthy attraction to her. Before meeting with this new suspect, the detectives decided to gather more information about him and interviewed his closest acquaintances. They discovered that both Kaytlin and Adam attended a party on the night of the murder and were supposed to spend time together. At the gathering, Adam was accompanied by a couple of friends, and there were witnesses who saw the whole group leave late in the evening, with Kaytlin among them. Several attendees were confident that they all planned to go to Krug Park, where Kaytlin's body was later found. It is noteworthy that they returned without Kaytlin and told everyone that she had left with an unknown group of people, which seemed strange, uncharacteristic of her. Upon checking Adam's social media profiles, it turned out that the day after the murder, he began posting peculiar messages. While he did not specifically mention what he had done, he clearly expressed regret for some action. However, when interrogated, he He insisted that he had nothing to do with the crime and that the post referred to something entirely different. Instead, he recounted his version of events. According to Adam, when they left the party, Kaytlin received a message from a friend named Amanda. After exchanging several short messages, they agreed to meet at Krug Park. Adam stated that he had warned Kaytlin that it was a bad idea to meet anyone at such a late hour, especially in a park he barely knew, but she didn't heed his advice and left. Adam claimed that he was just friends with Kaytlin, had no conflicts with her, countering the allegations of stalking and obsession, which he also considered absurd. He showed the detectives the correspondence, where they found nothing incriminating. By Adam's own admission, the allegations of obsession with Kaytlin were clearly fabricated. He explained that the last time he saw her was not far from the place where they had spent time with friends, and she got into an SUV, which she was probably picked up in by Amanda. Adam himself saw this car for the first time, did not know who it belonged to, he couldn't recognize it, nor could the other participants at the meeting. He insisted that he believed Amanda was involved in what happened to Kaytlin. Interestingly, his account was immediately confirmed by several witnesses among the young people who were at that meeting. They also saw how Kaytlin got into an unknown Santa Fe SUV while Adam stayed with them. Adam appeared extremely upset and even went to the family of the deceased to express his condolences. Everyone believed that he sincerely mourned this loss and willingly helped the Root family cope with their grief, even assisting Kaytlin's family during the funeral. Further investigation confirmed that she had indeed communicated with a girl named Amanda. When detectives spoke to the father of Kaytlin, David Stevens, it turned out that David was well acquainted with all of his daughter's close friends. There weren't many of them, and Amanda was among them. According to him, their relationship was complicated. The teenagers were sometimes best friends and at other times fought and literally hated each other. It emerged that this girl was known to both Kaytlin's best friend and her mother, both of whom considered Amanda a very unpleasant character who left mixed impressions. Consequently, the police became interested in Amanda and decided to meet with her. She was detained and ended up under interrogation. Amanda did not immediately disclose all the information they knew about the case. She even reported that Kaytlin had disappeared rather than died. From the very beginning, Amanda acted as if she did not understand what was happening. According to her, she did not call Kaytlin on that fateful evening, had not seen her. Amanda countering what Adam and his friends claimed. Their last conversation, she said, took place on Saturday afternoon. She even provided the police with her social media account so that investigators could verify her statements. She used the pseudonym Amanda Panda without any photos. Amanda continued to deny that she had communicated with or met her friend on Sunday and provided an alibi, stating that her neighbor could confirm she had spent the entire evening at home. The police checked this information, and the woman confirmed the alibi, reporting that she had repeatedly seen Amanda in the house throughout the evening, including at the approximate time of the attack. They had crossed paths and communicated several times, which ruled out her involvement in the crime. Amanda had no plans to go out anywhere and had been at home all evening in her loungewear. After this confirmation, the police were forced to let Amanda go. All possible leads were investigated, but they remained empty-handed. The investigation reached a dead end. Due to the many participants involved, the story became so confusing that it spiraled out of control. Then, the police accessed Kaytlin's mobile phone in search of clues, allowing detectives to navigate the gallery and find a photo that was the last one taken before the brutal attack. There were no people in the image, but it included the facade of a store found in the city, about 5 kilometers from Kaytlin's house. After obtaining access to the recordings from the store's CCTV cameras, they managed to find a car that matched the description of the SUV associated with the team. When this photo was taken near the store, a dark car pulled up, from which a limping man emerged. He bought snacks and immediately left. Unfortunately, this did not yield any clues, as the store employees did not remember anyone, and the image was too blurry. The police continued to study the mobile phone of Kaytlin regarding the account named Amanda Dow. Correspondence from this page revealed that she had communicated with Kaytlin on the evening of her murder. Between them, there was a short dialogue where the girls agreed to meet and smoke a joint. As it turned out, this account belonged to a girl named Amanda Bennett, The same Amanda who was now under scrutiny by the authorities and likely had several accounts on social media. She was a 17-year-old girl who, at the time, was in a serious relationship with her 18-year-old boyfriend, Sebastian Dowell. The police went to the address where Amanda and Sebastian lived. They immediately found a dark Santa Fe SUV that matched the description of the one captured on CCTV at the convenience store where Kaytlin had filmed just before her death. There were enough clues to consider Amanda and Sebastian prime suspects. They were arrested, and while they provided an alibi, it took some time to verify it. It was decided to arrest them and also confiscate their vehicles, mobile phones for examination. Detectives questioned them separately. When they spoke to Amanda, they didn't disclose what they knew. They simply decided to restore the chronology of events starting from Friday, which was a clever move. In fact, the police were particularly interested in Saturday and Sunday. If Amanda remembered Friday well but suddenly could not recall anything from Sunday, it would appear suspicious. The police often use this technique during interrogations to break down criminals. Amanda detailed her Friday evening spent with her boyfriend and their 2-month-old child. Difficulties arose, however, when she was asked about Saturday. Suddenly, she claimed that she had actually confused the days, and the events she described occurred on Saturday. Meanwhile, Sebastian also struggled. He could not recall what he had been doing with his common-law wife in the past few days. His statements increasingly contradicted the story he had provided. Everything suggested that Amanda had prepared for her meeting with the police, but she became a little confused. Her boyfriend didn't have much time either. He couldn't even say anything about the movie they supposedly watched together at the cinema, despite Amanda describing it in detail. But they was never found on the CCTV footage. There were no tickets or any data confirming that they had been in the area over that weekend. Amanda's story remained uncorroborated. This suspicious couple was clearly lying to the police. When Sebastian was confronted with the obvious inconsistencies in their stories, he became nervous. After that, the police noticed there were some cuts on his hands. Sebastian said they were from a cat, however, he later changed his story and admitted that they might be from his knives. His collection contained numerous stabbing and cutting items. During the arrest and searches, several knives from Sebastian's collection were confiscated in hopes of finding blood on them. Later, the examination confirmed that there were particles of Kaytlin's blood on one knife. During the conversation, it became evident that Sebastian was in a subordinate position in the relationship, which he confirmed by stating that Amanda controlled everything happening 100% and that he obeyed her. According to him, Amanda completely excluded strangers from their social circle. He didn't even have friends that he could choose on his own. In fact, his social interactions were restricted because Sebastian complained that he had to ask for permission for any of his desires. For example, he liked to smoke a joint, but he would only do so after getting Amanda's approval. She was jealous and rude. In fits of anger, she often beat Sebastian quite cruelly. Once, she even broke his ribs. Sebastian feared that Amanda would eventually kill him with a knife. Sebastian said that Amanda suffered from some mental disorders that would suddenly thrust her into this aggressive state shortly before the crime. They had gone to a psychotherapist, but all the doctor did was double the dosage of her medications. However, Sebastian was not entirely innocent either. His social media profile contained a lot of dark humor, as well as cruel and murderous imagery. It seemed he was obsessed with this topic. Despite the detectives not revealing the real reason for Amanda and Sebastian's arrest, it turned out that Sebastian was aware of the murder in the park. He insisted that he had heard about it on social media, but he had already been caught in a lie. The more nervous he became, the more his story changed. In the end, he admitted that he knew Kaytlin quite well. They communicated frequently. He and Kaytlin were good friends. Kaytlin even visited them in the hospital to congratulate them on the birth of their child, during which she spoke warmly about him, touching Amanda, the new mother. From that moment on, indirect evidence began to surface, suggesting that the tragedy was provoked by Amanda's jealousy and erratic behavior. At first, Sebastian denied such assumptions, but later he confessed that Amanda had often expressed anger towards him when he exchanged compliments with Kaytlin. He continued to deny any romantic connection between them, insisting that it was purely friendly communication, while also maintaining that he was not involved in any crime. One of their friends mentioned that Amanda had always been friendly, sociable, and positive. However, the situation changed dramatically after the birth of their child, which many attributed to postpartum depression. In addition, she believed that something more than just friendship had developed between Sebastian and Kaytlin. Amanda frequently referred to Kaytlin and was clearly angry, exhibiting intense jealousy towards her boyfriend. Judging by her friend's words, this turned into an obsession with getting rid of Kaytlin. Moreover, Amanda was aware of many details about the crime that she could not have known by chance, as they had not been covered in the media. This discussion smoothly led to topics about their relationships and the birth of the child. Amanda's demeanor visibly changed when they began discussing Kaytlin and Sebastian. This was clearly a sensitive subject for her, but she composed herself and did not reveal her emotions. It is curious that during the entire interrogation, Amanda did not show any regret or pity toward her friend. On the contrary, from the very beginning, she appeared in high spirits and giggled frequently. Considering the circumstances that had led Amanda to this situation, her behavior seemed unsettling. The true motive behind this case included records of demonic summonings. This confirmed that he was involved in all sorts of dark themes with his girlfriend, but he claimed that it was all part of a hobby and role, playing games, insisting that they did not take it too far or commit any crimes. However, there was confirmation that they planned the murder in stages. Even though the information was deleted, it was easily recoverable. This became the main incriminating evidence against both criminals. When both were informed about this evidence, they abruptly changed their tactics, refuting their earlier statements and beginning to blame each other. Judging by their correspondence and records found in the house, both criminals were charged with first-degree murder. Upon reviewing their dialogues, the frightening truth of this brutal massacre was revealed. The murder was indeed ritualistic. That evening, Amanda and Sebastian sent a message to 6 contacts from their list to lure one of the victims into a trap. They probably did not care who responded, but only Kaytlin Root did, which ultimately sealed her fate. The jury was shocked by the senselessness of this act of violence, simultaneously remained confident that it was Amanda who initiated it and took the life of Kaytlin with pleasure. Her fingerprints were found on the murder weapon, and Sebastian likely helped by holding Kaytlin. On May 5, 2017, Sebastian Dowell was sentenced to life in prison for second-degree murder in the death of Kaytlin Root. Just days later, on May 9, 2017, Amanda Bennett was sentenced to life in prison for the same crime, second-degree murder. Both are without the possibility of parole. Kaytlin's family, while satisfied with the sentence, expressed deep sorrow over the loss of their daughter. The Missouri community believes that Christianity involves more than just having the right beliefs about God. They emphasize the importance of inner devotion, moral growth, and genuine repentance. They meet at home, hold educational gatherings. The Missouri are committed to following biblical principles, which include loving one's enemies and rejecting all forms of violence. This is the kind of environment Jeffrey David Borlase was raised in. In his youth, he got a summer job at the water park in Missouri. On his very first day at work, Jeffrey met a charming girl who, like him, wanted to earn a few dollars during the school holidays. Her name was Tanya May. Jeffrey was smitten. His heart told him that he had met the one with whom he would spend his whole life. Tanya was born on September 13, 1974. She was raised in a family where Christian values were paramount, patient, indulgent, and selfless. Tanya saw in Jeffrey her other half, a wonderful husband, and a loving father. Everything happened as they hoped. They got married. Inspired by love and hope, they created a strong family. Then, 4 children were born. True to their beliefs, Jeffrey and Tanya decided to take in 4 more boys from an orphanage to raise, making a total of 8 children: Taylor, Kaya, Alexis, Meseret, Tristan, Eli, Stephen, and Meliku Borlase. As time went by, the kids grew up. Their daughter, Taylor, despite the age difference, was very close to her brothers, with whom she loved to play pranks. They also shared common interests, The children were involved in sports and music. This continued until 2015, when Taylor did not finish high school and did not move to Boone to attend Appalachian State University. However, whenever the opportunity arose, the girl visited her relatives. Meanwhile, Tristan grew up like any other child. Sometimes he got annoyed with his parents, for example, when he was not allowed to use a cell phone or social media until a certain age. He was also forbidden to date girls until he graduated from high school. Overall, all the children in the family, regardless of whether they were born in marriage or adopted, grew up in a harmonious atmosphere and were not deprived of love or affection. Their loving mother closely monitored the internal order of relations between brothers and sisters, prayed frequently, and did good deeds. There was one incident that will forever remain in Robin's memory: Tanya's compassionate mother. Her daughter sold her expensive wedding ring and replaced it with a cheap one to help build houses for residents of Haiti affected by the hurricane in December 2017. Pleasant changes occurred in the life of the family as Jeffrey, his wife, and children moved to a new house in Watauga County, North Carolina. The new house was more spacious, had a larger lot, and was located just under 2 miles from Robin. This would be very convenient, especially when help was needed with babysitting. Around the same time, Tristan, who was in high school, started to participate in track and field. Alexis and Kaya worked as counselors at summer camps. At first glance, it might seem that the Borlase household never had any problems or troubles, but this was not the case. Over time, Tristan's behavior began to raise concerns. By 2019, while in high school, he started having difficulties understanding some school subjects, and these challenges only increased day by day. In addition, sometimes the boy behaved inappropriately. Although by that time he had everything, he constantly argued with his parents about his own mobile phone and access to social media. Tristan spent a lot of time on his Instagram account. The eldest of the Borlase children, Taylor, was always interested in the lives of her brothers and sisters and noticed that Tristan often quarreled with their parents. She also learned about his other problems. Some teachers tried to push Tristan to give his all. One of them was initially saw in Tristan a smart student with great potential. However, he soon became convinced that Tristan, who was frequently late for classes, was not interested in studying at all. Tristan withdrew from the school community, was indifferent to everything, and did not want to try. It got to the point where he wore headphones during class and sat with a vacant expression. The teacher tried to help Tristan, and one day after class, they had a heart-to-heart talk. It was a very productive conversation, and Tristan assured his teacher that he would try to achieve more, but in the end, he did not see any improvements. After a while, Tristan became friends with a girl from their religious community, Evelyn. They began dating, and he sometimes shared his frustrations about his relationship with his family, mentioning the frequent quarrels with his mother and father. On April 10, 2019, Tristan's teacher called his parents to complain about his academic performance and behavior. Jeffrey and Tanya left their youngest child with his grandmother and went to the middle school to understand what was happening. That same day, Taylor received a text from her mother, asking if she knew that Tristan was using illegal substances. Later, Tanya explained to Taylor that she had taken Tristan's phone to investigate the claim. After 4 p.m., Tanya informed her mother, Robin, that the conversation with Tristan had gone well. Although they had taken away his phones and car keys until he started behaving normally and focusing on school, Tristan didn't seem upset. They returned home. They decided to take the family dog for a walk together. Before that, Jeffrey headed to his van while Tanya went into the house. Much of what happened afterward cannot be fully reconstructed, but it is clear that inside the house, Tristan suddenly attacked his mother with a knife, presumably taken from the kitchen, and stabbed her deeply. At about 5 p.m., cameras and CCTV installed outside filmed Tristan running across the yard, covered in blood. At that moment, Jeffrey saw him and got out of the car. Tristan walked up to him and suddenly attacked him. As Jeffrey ran away, he tripped, and Tristan rushed at him. First, Tristan hit him with his fist and then stabbed him multiple times. Neighbors reported that on that Wednesday at about 5:30 p.m., they heard loud screams. Tristan's hands were covered in blood. He went into the kitchen, where he had previously dragged his lifeless mother's body, picked her up, and carried her outside. Then he spent about an hour cleaning up the scene, even using a hose to wash the porch near the house. Around 8:30 p.m., Tristan went to his grandmother Robin's house to pick up his younger brother. She was surprised and asked him about his parents. He said that they had gone to the store for shopping. After about 20 minutes passed without any word from Tanya and Jeffrey, Robin felt a strong worry as such behavior was extremely unusual. At that moment, another grandson called her to tell her that his parents had not picked him up as they usually did. Robin immediately contacted Alexis and Taylor. They agreed to pick up the boy and meet together at the family home. Alexis arrived first with her boyfriend. It was already dark outside. Upon entering the house, they were horrified to see traces of blood on the carpet. Assuming that Jeffrey and Tanya might be in the storehouse, they headed there. Under the hammock, they saw Jeffrey's wrapped body. Alexis rushed to him, but her boyfriend tried to hold her back. He grabbed her and dragged her toward the house, saying that they should call 911. A few seconds later, they saw Tristan driving away in his father's black car. Despite his fleeting appearance, Alexis and her boyfriend managed to notice the blood on his face and hands. Meanwhile, Tristan contacted his friend Evelyn and went to her house. She realized that he was worried about something and also noticed several scratches on his forehead and hands. However, Tristan assured her that he had just had a fight with his parents and got the scratches while playing with his dog. Around 10:30 p.m., the detective received a report filed by Alexis. He immediately went to the scene. Seeing a bloody trail in the Borlase house, the partners followed it upstairs but found nothing. Returning to the yard, they began to search it and soon came across the body of 43-year-old Jeffrey, who had stab wounds to his abdomen. Continuing the search of the area adjacent to the house, detectives found a car in the woods. Previously, relatives had reported that Jeffrey's car had disappeared from the yard. It looked like it was an unsuccessful attempt to hide the family's white 2000 Ford pickup truck. The investigators then realized why the criminal had needed it. In the cabin was the body of 44-year-old Tanya, covered with a blanket and stuffed with bags of mulch. The police began collecting evidence, noticing red stains on the floor, the dashboard, and the rear door of the car. Considering the seriousness of the events, an experienced investigator was urgently called in due to the case of serious crimes of the Watauga County Sheriff's Department. He arrived at approximately 11:35 p.m. and examined the crime scene, after which the officers reported to him the statements they had collected from relatives. Then investigator decided to take the family to the sheriff's office, as it was necessary to document the interview with each of them. First of all, the lead investigator interviewed Robin, who explained what she had been doing that day and what she had discussed with her daughter Tanya. Then it was Taylor's turn, who also told everything she knew. Tristan was undoubtedly the prime suspect, while investigators were trying to piece together the puzzle, and the family was in a state of shock. Tristan was spending time with his girlfriend. He stayed overnight with her. The next morning they went to Walmart and McDonald's. Tristan promised they would go to class together later, but that didn't happen. Evelyn believed he simply wanted to escape his parents for a bit, so he suggested staying with a relative. That same morning, Tristan invited her to get in the car, and they drove toward Tennessee. Meanwhile, a warrant was issued for the arrest of the suspected killer, and searches continued at the suspect's residence. The investigator processed evidence from the white pickup truck, which was difficult to handle because it was on a steep incline. The truck was taken to the sheriff's office, where an agent from the North Carolina Bureau of Investigation joined the team and took a total of 737 photos from the scene. At the same time, investigator learned that Tristan had been spotted in Tennessee. He began the paperwork for extraditing the suspect and considered traveling there with Robin to speak to Tristan, given that he was a minor. Information about the car was shared with the National Crime Information Center, prompting efforts in Tennessee to locate the vehicle. The search for the car began, leading to a chase. While driving with Evelyn, Tristan notices that someone seems to be following them. He told his girlfriend that he had to hurry and sharply increased speed. She naturally did not understand what was happening. To make her less confused, Tristan suggested that his parents probably reported the car as stolen to find him faster. Tristan raced along the highway but eventually succumbed and stopped. Their car was surrounded by police cars. Evelyn was completely confused seeing Tristan handcuffed and placed in a police car. Officers noticed that Tristan did not appear upset or worried. According to the county sheriff's office, both young men's clothes were stained with blood. Police officers obtained search warrants for their mobile phones. Tristan's interrogation, conducted by investigator on April 11, 2019, was recorded on video and audio. Tristan answered all questions and did not resist. At times, he was overwhelmed with emotion and cried, but he admitted that he had killed his parents, detailed all his actions. When investigator asked him about his relationship with Jeffrey, Tristan stated that he had never feared Jeffrey's cruelty, let alone that he could hit his son. Tristan also mentioned that he wanted to go back to the house but got scared when he saw police cars and fled. Accused of 2 counts of murder, Tristan Borlase was taken into custody without bail, set to appear in court on May 7, 2019. In later statements, the Watauga County Sheriff remarked that the local population had never faced such serious danger, explaining that such incidents are unpredictable and very rare. This was, of course, very sad. Speaking to local media, the district attorney thanked everyone for their joint efforts, stating that the high level of dedication shown during the investigation and the search for the truth should inspire society. The autopsy report on Tanya's body indicated that she had been stabbed several times, including in the left chest, back, and arm. She had received multiple stab wounds to her left arm, likely caused by defensive actions. Blunt trauma to the head, neck, torso, and limbs were also identified. There were reports of suffocation injuries that the victim may have sustained during neck compression. As for Jeffrey, the autopsy revealed multiple stab wounds to his left chest and back, in addition to cut wounds to his arms and hands, abrasions to his scalp and forehead, blunt force trauma to his torso and limbs. Jeffrey and Tanya's funeral took place on April 17, 2019, at the Alliance Bible Fellowship. Relatives of the victims wrote a mournful obituary in which all 7 children expressed that Tanya and Jeffrey never had the opportunity to live for themselves, as they always lived only for their children. Instead of flowers, memorial contributions to the family fund were requested. By this time, search warrants had been issued to examine data from home surveillance cameras, video call accounts allegedly belonging to Tristan, and a total of 5 mobile phones that could contain information related to the crime. Having gained access to the CCTV footage, detective investigator began reconstructing the chronology of events. The investigators continued their work. Inside the car, they found Tristan's report card from Watauga County School, several pens, electronic cigarettes, a plastic container with purchases, and a receipt from McDonald's issued at 6:40 a.m. on April 11, 2019. Additionally, they found a North Carolina driver's license issued in the name of Jeffrey Borlase in the glove compartment. In the driver's side door compartment was a black pocket knife with stains on the blade that looked like blood. A week after Tristan's arrest, Taylor visited him in jail for the first time and was unpleasantly surprised by his behavior. Tristan was not only unrepentant but also tried to blame others for what happened. He was convinced that sooner or later he would regain his freedom. Taylor felt disgusted, turned around, and left. Her second visit was on May 11th, on the occasion of Tristan's birthday. This time, she brought Robin. However, this meeting was almost indistinguishable from the previous one. For Taylor, such behavior was unacceptable, especially considering that their parents had died tragically, and she was now responsible for taking care of her orphaned brothers and sisters. After 3 weeks, the neighbors decided to help the Borlase children, organized a fundraising campaign to cover the costs of maintaining the property, food, gasoline, car insurance, and clothes. During this time, Tristan had phone conversations from the prison cell, where he insisted on a new version of events. According to him, his mother first attacked him from behind while he was sitting at the table doing his homework. The trial of Tristan began on February 16, 2022. His lawyer stated that his client was responsible for murder, but not for the charge of first-degree murder. The prosecution, Assistant District Attorney Jasmine McKinney, told jurors that despite being a very large family with children who were not always well behaved, they never lacked love. Testimonies were heard from 5 witnesses, 2 of whom were law enforcement officers, and 3 were relatives of the victims, including Robin, Taylor, and Alexis. On February 17th, the jury was presented with diagrams of the crime scene, obtained from photographic work. Also on this day, Evelyn testified. On February 20th, during the 4th day of the trial, 3 witnesses were questioned. On the 5th day, a pathologist shared her findings, although Tristan's defense objected to the display of post-mortem photographs of Jeffrey and Tanya. The judge allowed the images to be shown, ensuring that they were not extreme, pointless, or used solely to incite passion. Using post-mortem diagrams and autopsy footage taken by an experienced photographer, the pathologist noted that both deceased individuals had small abrasions on their palms and forearms, indicating they were trying to defend themselves from the weapon used by the criminal. Jeffrey and Tanya attempted to shield themselves with their hands when they were attacked, but unfortunately, it was to no avail. She reported that the cause of death for both spouses was stab wounds to the body. After the lunch break, the prosecution called Tristan for questioning. He was asked to describe what his father and mother were like. Tristan said that in their house, they always loved to read and laughed a lot, but there was also constant chaos due to the large number of children and animals. He noted that Jeffrey and Tanya focused on raising their children, teaching them to help each other and show compassion. Tristan remembered having disagreements with his parents but believed they never crossed the line. Rather, there was always an opportunity to discuss problems and misunderstandings openly. Detective investigator was called to the courtroom and testified using video recordings from surveillance cameras. The 9th day of the trial took place on February 28, 2022. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury found Tristan Borlase guilty and sentenced him to 2 life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. In a later statement, the district attorney expressed his sincere hope that this decision would bring closure to the Borlase family. According to the latest news, Tristan faces additional charges for a fight in prison. Tristan was charged with a misdemeanor for assaulting another inmate, allegedly punching him in the face and kneeing him in the chest. Taylor and Alexis continue to care for the children and console them with the hope that their parents are not in pain and are looking down on them from heaven, concerned for each of their children. The children will never forget the love and care their mom, dad surrounded them with. Undoubtedly, Jeffrey and Tanya Borlase became symbols of kindness and mercy, which they generously bestowed upon the world during their lives.
The story of Meredith Lynn Sullivan Chapman, 33, captured national attention and was one of the most talked about cases of 2018. Born on January 31, 1985, in Newark, Delaware. Meredith was the youngest of 3 children in the Sullivan family. She was raised in a loving environment, supported by her older brother, Thomas, and sister, Jessica, cherished her. The Sullivan family was financially stable, and her parents ensured that their children received an excellent education while also encouraging them to pursue their personal interests and talents. However, everything changed for Meredith when she was in middle school, as her parents decided to divorce. Fortunately, the separation was friendly, with no significant arguments or legal battles, and both parents continued to be actively involved in their children's lives. Although Meredith found the divorce emotionally challenging, she always felt cared for and loved. Meredith was a kind, outgoing person who easily made friends. Her cheerful and engaging personality made her popular among her peers. From a young age, she excelled in school, learning came easily to her. She was curious, quick to grasp new concepts, and always willing to take the lead. In addition to her academic success, she had a strong passion for painting and was also very active in sports. During high school, she focused on cheerleading, eventually became the team captain. Even as a teenager, Meredith displayed determination and confidence, working hard to achieve her goals. Despite her drive, she treated others with fairness and respect, earning the admiration of both her classmates and teachers. After graduating from high school, Meredith began her studies at the University of Delaware, focusing on corporate communications and social sciences. She quickly adjusted to college life, excelled academically, and received a merit-based scholarship. Meredith stayed active in cheerleading, even giving presentations on it. Additionally, she participated in tennis, dance, and theater productions at the university. In her junior year, she secured an internship at a radio station in Philadelphia, where she managed the station's social media. This experience aligned perfectly with her career goals and deepened her passion for communications. Meredith joined an elite student organization, taking on a significant role that helped her build connections for her future career. For her senior project, she created a documentary about Joe Biden, which received notable recognition, including a nomination for a regional Emmy Award. This success opened opportunities for her in the media and communications field. After graduating with a bachelor's degree in 2007, Meredith worked on Capitol Hill as communications manager for U.S. Congressman Mike Castle and ran a winning campaign for former Delaware State Treasurer Chip Flowers. Her ambition and strong work ethic enabled her to excel in fast-paced environments, and she consistently pursued opportunities for intellectual growth. While in college, Meredith met a slightly older young man named Luke Chapman, who was also a graduate of the University of Delaware. They quickly formed a connection and began dating. Meredith and Luke shared many similarities. Both were intelligent, ambitious, and highly motivated. Luke, like Meredith, aimed for a career in public service, eventually became a member of the New York City Council. For a period, their professional journeys aligned. They both achieved significant accomplishments in their fields. Meredith and Luke had a good income and, shortly after their wedding, bought a large home in a quiet and upscale neighborhood in Fairfield Crest. They chose to delay starting a family to concentrate on their careers in politics. They also adopted a golden retriever named Indy, whom they cared for with the same dedication that others might show to a child. After several years, Meredith changed her career significantly. She left the field of politics to pursue a career in education. She obtained a master's degree in education and returned to the University of Delaware, her former school, where she began teaching public relations and digital marketing courses. She created strategies for social media engagement and researched new communication methods. In addition to teaching, she participated in various university committees. In 2013, Meredith took on the role of marketing director while still lecturing and publishing academic work. Her colleagues and students held her in high regard, praising her intelligence, professionalism, and unwavering dedication. Luke's career was progressing well. He dedicated long hours to work and took his responsibilities seriously. Over time, he and Meredith became deeply focused on their personal ambitions, resulting in them being home together less and less often. As a result, a noticeable distance formed between them. Although they appeared to have a perfect relationship on the outside, the connection between them had faded. Conversations about starting a family had stopped, and their marriage felt more like a formality than a true partnership. However, neither of them rushed to end the relationship, as their living arrangement was functioning adequately. They cohabited more like roommates than spouses, managing their own finances and daily routines separately. There were no fights or confrontations. In public, they projected an image of happiness. No one in their social circle knew what was really happening behind closed doors. In 2016, Meredith chose to re-enter politics, this time as a candidate rather than an assistant or staff member. Driven and ambitious, she launched her campaign to challenge the current senator for Delaware's 8th District, David Soccola. Her campaign gained momentum, and she had a good chance of winning. Ultimately, she lost by a narrow margin of less than 5%. After the election, Meredith returned to her career in education and focused on advancing her academic work. By 2017, she decided to hire an assistant, specifically a creative director, to oversee marketing efforts. She posted the job online and received numerous applications. Meredith personally interviewed each candidate, but one, a 49-year-old named Mark Gerardo, particularly impressed her. He met all the qualifications for the role in terms of experience and skills. During the interview, he made a positive impression and agreed to start working immediately. At that time, Mark was living in North Carolina but was ready to move for the position. He had been married to Jennifer Gerardo, but she stayed behind initially to sell their home and finish other obligations before relocating to join him. Mark proved to be a thoughtful, intelligent, and well-educated person with a strong background in marketing. He exceeded expectations right from the start. He quickly built a good working relationship with his new supervisor, and they found common interests almost immediately. Mark was 16 years older than his young boss. At that time, Meredith had grown emotionally distant from the husband she had been with for nearly 10 years, as both were heavily focused on their careers. Mark's situation was more complex. He had been married for almost 25 years and had remained committed to his wife during that time. As co-workers, they developed a close bond. Their teamwork was seamless, and they had a silent understanding of each other. Mark was dependable, efficient, and skilled. However, beneath their professional connection, a deeper relationship was beginning to form, unnoticed by others. For Meredith, Mark became more than just a trusted colleague. She felt comfortable sharing her personal thoughts and feelings with him, which meant a lot to her. In her busy pursuit of success, she had little time for friends, family, or meaningful conversations. Even her husband felt more like a stranger than a partner. But with Mark, she felt calm, safe, and truly understood. She eventually stopped resisting and invited him to spend time together outside of work. Just 2 weeks after Mark moved to Newark, Meredith suggested they meet after work at a local bar to relax. She wanted to have a conversation in a more casual setting. That evening, Mark opened up to her and, for the first time, shared his story. Mark Gerardo was born in 1968. His parents were strict and deeply religious, enforcing high standards of obedience and discipline in their large family. From an early age, Mark understood the importance of hard work and performed well in school. When Mark was 18, he met Jennifer, who was 16 and working as a waitress at a fast food restaurant. He often visited the restaurant, captivated by the girl behind the counter, but he never mustered the courage to talk to her or share his feelings. Jennifer and her family eventually moved to a nearby town, causing her to lose touch with Mark for several years. In 1990, they met again at a local shopping center where Jennifer worked as a sales associate. Mark was excited to see her but felt too shy to make a move. Noticing this, Jennifer took the initiative and asked him out first. Their relationship quickly grew deeper, and in 1992, Mark proposed. Jennifer happily accepted, and less than a year later, they got married. Mark and Jennifer, newly married, settled in Indianapolis, Indiana, where they purchased a home together. At this point, Mark had completed his degree in graphic design and landed a well-paying job in that field. Jennifer was successful as a real estate agent, so they enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle. Although they never had children, they adopted 3 dogs that they treated as part of their family. To their friends, neighbors, and relatives, Mark and Jennifer appeared to be a perfect couple, deeply in love and genuinely happy. They rarely had public disagreements. Their home was known for its peaceful atmosphere. Both were strong, independent individuals with stable incomes and lives. By the mid-2000s, after being together for over 20 years, the Gerardos faced difficulties. Mark experienced the loss of both his parents in a short time, while Jennifer, who had put a lot of effort into starting her own business, encountered significant financial troubles. Overwhelmed by emotional and financial stress, they decided to make a big change in their lives. They sold their house and moved to the peaceful town of Greenville, South Carolina. Mark quickly secured a stable job in marketing, while Jennifer opted to focus on family life as she looked for the right job opportunity. During this time, they traveled a lot and spent quality time together. The emotional distance that had developed between them began to disappear. Their relationship rekindled, and for a year and a half, they experienced what felt like a second honeymoon. In 2017, Mark started looking for new job opportunities to find a more fulfilling role with better pay. During his search, he found a job posting from Meredith. The couple was not afraid of the move. Mark went ahead first because the job needed him to start right away, while Jennifer stayed behind to sell their house and take care of local affairs. She planned to join him in Newark about a month later. That evening, Mark shared his story with Meredith, who listened carefully. In return, she talked about her own life, including her career successes and the slow deterioration of her marriage. As they talked, they connected on a deeper level, feeling as if they had known each other for years. They built a strong sense of trust and stayed at the bar until late at night. Afterward, they went back to Mark's apartment and spent the night together. This marked the beginning of a private relationship that they kept hidden from others. They continued to see each other secretly, often meeting at Mark's place while his wife was out of state. For Meredith, starting a romance with Mark didn't pose any real challenges. Her marriage to Luke had long become a mere formality. For Mark, the situation was much more complicated. First, he had never cheated in his 25 years of marriage. Second, he found himself unexpectedly attracted to Meredith, who was much younger than him. Third, he knew that Meredith was still legally married, just like he was. Despite these issues, Mark and Meredith's relationship continued even after Jennifer moved to Newark. From the beginning, Jennifer felt that something was off. She sensed that another woman had been in their new home, but she chose not to confront her husband right away. Instead, she decided to gather information to confirm her suspicions. Mark often worked late and became more distant from his family. When Jennifer asked him about it, he attributed his behavior to tiredness and a heavy workload. Their physical closeness had almost vanished. This continued for several months until Jennifer confronted him about the possibility of infidelity. Mark denied it. Although he attempted to end his affair with Meredith, their bond was too strong, and after a short break, they resumed their secret meetings. Meredith had made a decision. After discussing it with her husband, Luke, they agreed to proceed with a peaceful divorce. On February 14, 2018, Valentine's Day, Jennifer confronted Mark. She revealed that she was aware of his affair with his boss. She had hired a private investigator who followed Mark, took compromising photos, and recorded the locations where he met Meredith. With this evidence, Mark had no escape. However, he tried to justify his actions, assuring Jennifer that he would end the affair to save their marriage. Unfortunately, this promise was short-lived, as he continued his relationship with Meredith, but now with more caution. Jennifer didn't trust Mark, so she decided to keep a close watch on him. She placed a GPS device in his car and installed monitoring software on his phone and computer. She sewed listening devices into Mark's clothes to secretly record his conversations when they were apart. One of those recordings captured Jennifer's growing insecurity. The situation escalated when Mark discovered the tracking device. Realizing he could no longer put off an important decision, he told Jennifer that he had fallen in love with Meredith, his boss, and wanted to be with her. He also announced his plans to file for divorce. This news was a severe shock for Jennifer, who was 47 at the time. After nearly 25 years of marriage, her husband was leaving her for a younger woman. To make things worse, they had recently moved to a new city, and Jennifer had not yet found a job. This left her feeling financially unstable, emotionally unsupported, and lost. Her life felt like it was falling apart, and she was struggling to cope. By early March 2018, Meredith completed her divorce from Luke and was no longer tied to any commitments. She anticipated that Mark would also finalize his divorce soon, but his situation was more complicated. Due to specific legal requirements in their new state, Mark needed to establish residency before he could file for divorce, and they had only recently moved. At the same time, Meredith resigned from her job at the University of Delaware. She was about to start a new role as Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at Villanova University, one of Pennsylvania's top institutions. Additionally, she received an offer for a leadership position at Ruffalo Noel Levitz, a prominent consulting firm specializing in higher education strategy. On April 5th, Meredith moved into her new home in Radnor Township, Pennsylvania. She was gradually getting settled, and about a week later, Mark joined her. He had also left his previous job and started a new role at Villanova University as Meredith's personal assistant. It felt like a fresh start for the couple, a promising new chapter. They just needed to complete a few final steps to fully embrace this new beginning, but they were unaware that a deadly threat was already approaching. Hurt and betrayed, Jennifer began plotting a disturbing act of revenge. On April 23, 2018, Mark and Meredith had plans to meet at a local restaurant to celebrate a fresh start. Before heading to the restaurant, Meredith stopped by her house to change clothes while Mark ordered their meal and waited for her. As time went by, Meredith didn't arrive, and she wasn't answering her phone, making Mark uneasy. Suddenly, he received a series of alarming messages from Jen Eyre, filled with anger and resentment. She wished him endless misery, and then he received a photo that shocked him. It was a picture of Meredith's kitchen. In a panic, Mark abandoned everything and rushed to Meredith's house. When he arrived, he saw her car parked in the driveway. A black Chevrolet was also parked down the street, but Mark didn't pay much attention to it at the time. The lights were on inside the house, and the front door was unlocked. However, as soon as he stepped inside, he was met with silence. He went directly to the kitchen, was horrified to find Meredith, 33, and Jen Eyre, 48, lying on the floor in large pools of blood. It was too late for them, both died from gunshot wounds. Mark screamed and rushed outside. His cries alarmed the nearby neighbors, who quickly called for emergency services. Initially, investigators thought Mark might have been involved in the incident due to his emotional struggles and complicated relationship with Jen Eyre. However, this theory was quickly dismissed. The weapon was discovered under Jen Eyre's body and contained only her fingerprints. Authorities concluded that the act was premeditated, followed by her own self-harm. Before the incident, Jen Eyre had sent several emails to a close friend expressing her intentions to do something drastic. Later evidence showed she had spent around 2 weeks preparing for this. She bought a firearm, rented a car, and collected items for a disguise. Jen Eyre also managed to find Meredith's new address on her own. For an entire week, she observed the couple's activities. Neighbors reported seeing a woman in a wig driving a black Chevrolet and lingering in the area, but she did not seem threatening. Mark also remembered noticing the car but thought it belonged to someone from the neighborhood. Jen Eyre had closely observed Meredith's routine and was aware of when they typically returned home. On the day of the incident, she arrived early, parked her car a few blocks away, and approached their house. She gained entry by breaking a window in the backyard and quietly entered. It is believed her intention was to confront, kill both Mark and Meredith before taking her own life. However, things did not go as planned. Meredith came home alone. Investigators later discovered that Meredith had taken out a life insurance policy valued at $500,000 about a year and a half prior, naming her ex-husband, Luke, as the beneficiary. After the divorce, this designation had not been changed. As a result, Luke Chapman became a person of interest as authorities looked into possible indirect involvement in the case. However, this theory was ultimately ruled out due to insufficient evidence. The investigation took only a few days, and authorities quickly closed the case, concluding that the responsible person was deceased, that there were no other suspects. Mark was exonerated but faced significant public and media scrutiny. Rather than withdrawing, he decided to speak out, giving interviews and appearing on talk shows to discuss the events in detail. A year later, Mark released a memoir detailing his relationships with both women and the circumstances surrounding the tragic incident. He expressed how deeply the experience affected him, noting that he never expected the woman he had been with for nearly 25 years could do something so devastating. While the book became a bestseller and was generally well received, public opinion was mixed. Some critics accused him of exploiting the situation and profiting from the tragedy by sharing his personal story. Meredith's family sued Luke after he refused to return the life insurance money he received after her death. The court ruled in his favor, ordering him to return only 10% of the total amount to her family, as the judge found no malicious intent on his part. Meredith had not expected to die and had not updated her policy before her passing. After she died, her remains were cremated, and her urn was given to her parents. Jen Eyre Gerardo was buried in her hometown of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Many still believe that Mark was also meant to be a victim that night but narrowly escaped a tragic fate. Addiction can completely dominate a person's mind and will, leading them to engage in disturbing, harmful behaviors. This dependency can stem from various sources, such as alcohol, banned substance, gambling, or even unhealthy relationships, and its impacts can be equally damaging. While some people eventually recognize that they have become trapped by their addictions, many others ignore the problem. Unfortunately, this denial often leads to a worsening situation. The tragic story of Dana Munda and Ghulam Munda is not an isolated case. In 2005, it sent shockwaves through the peaceful town of Hermitage. They was well known and admired by locals, almost like celebrities. Ghulam was a respected physician who owned his clinic, while Dana was exceptionally beautiful and nearly 24 years younger than him. To everyone who knew them, they appeared to have a perfect and successful relationship. However, on a warm day in May, a single gunshot shattered this facade, revealing a much darker reality marked by betrayal, dependency, and greed. Ghulam grew up in the slums of Gujarat, India. From a young age, he faced the harsh realities of poverty and hunger. These tough conditions shaped his strong character, motivated him to escape poverty and create a better life for himself. He worked hard, focused on excellence, and aspiring to become a doctor. After completing high school, Ghulam was accepted into a medical university, where he quickly became one of the top students. His hard work paid off when he was offered an internship at a prestigious clinic in the United States. There, he worked in the urology department and quickly gained a reputation as a promising young specialist with a bright future. After his internship, Ghulam received an attractive job offer and chose to remain in the U.S. He also began applying for U.S. citizenship. By the mid-1970s, he had moved to Hermitage, Pennsylvania, a small town with a population of just over 16,000. There, he opened his own clinic specializing in urological care. His career quickly flourished. Ghulam became a top professional, utilizing advanced technology and the latest equipment in his practice. His clinic gained a reputation as one of the best in the state. He accepted the most difficult and seemingly hopeless cases, attracting patients from both near and far, including overseas. Dr. Ghulam was well respected not only for his medical skills but also for his kindness. He frequently provided free medical care and often paid for expensive medications for patients who couldn't afford them. His compassion was rooted in his own challenging childhood, which motivated him to help others in need. With a prosperous medical practice, Ghulam enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle. He purchased an opulent home in a prestigious area and embraced a life filled with enjoyment. He believed in making the most of life and investing in what made him happy, such as gourmet food, traveling, luxury watches, rare collectibles, high-end cars, and spending time with attractive companions. In his 40s, Ghulam was still single when he noticed a young woman named Dana walking down the street and fell for her immediately. Dana was 24 years younger than him. She came from a religious Catholic family and had just graduated from high school when she met him. At first, she was hesitant about his interest, but over time, she accepted his generous gifts and let him pursue her. Dana's family struggled financially and couldn't afford a prestigious college education. When Ghulam found out about her situation, he offered to pay for her tuition because she wanted to work in healthcare. He supported her journey to become a registered nurse and later funded her master's degree in anesthesiology. Dana and her partner's romantic, Ghulam, relationship started several years after their initial meeting. Interestingly, even though they had strong religious values, Dana's parents accepted their relationship. They appreciated the kind, generous doctor who had helped support their daughter's education and overall well-being. Dana later became a highly skilled nurse anesthetist, secured a job at a prominent medical center. Ghulam continued to encourage her ambitions, supported her career advancement. They lived in Ghulam's luxurious home, where he gave Dana to an expensive car, lavish jewelry, and trips to fancy vacation destinations. When Dana turned 30, Ghulam, who was 54 at the time, proposed to her, and she accepted. They celebrated their engagement with an extravagant wedding ceremony that had over 150 guests, including family, friends, and many of Ghulam's business associates. It appeared that they were on their way to a long, happy life together. Initially, everything seemed perfect. Dana and Ghulam gained fame as local celebrities and were probably the richest people in their town. They enjoyed a luxurious life, traveling frequently, and the doctor generously indulged his much younger wife. They frequently attended charity galas and was always spotted together at public events. Donna chose to prioritize her career and took her time before starting a family. Ghulam supported her decision without any pressure. Many saw Donna as cheerful, friendly, and lively, which was the image she projected, until tragedy struck, started to turn her life upside down. At 37 years old, Donna lost her father after a long illness, which hit her hard. She had always had a close bond with him, referring to herself as a daddy's girl and seeing him as her main source of strength. After he died, Donna became deeply depressed. She isolated herself from others. Ghulam did his best to support her, fulfilling all her wishes, including a trip to Hawaii to help her feel better. However, nothing seemed to work except for antidepressants, which she started taking in larger doses. Donna immersed herself in work, hoping to find solace in her daily routine, but it didn't truly alleviate her suffering. A few years later, she was diagnosed with a kidney condition that caused intense back pain. Even though her husband was a well-known urologist, he couldn't fully relieve her discomfort. The treatments only offered temporary relief, and her symptoms kept coming back, often worse than before. In her desperation, Donna started to rely heavily on strong pain medication. She began secretly taking doses from her workplace, where she was responsible for managing and administering medications. This made it easy for her to take small amounts without being noticed. She would quietly use portions meant for patients, just enough so that no one would realize. Together with her antidepressants, the prescription painkillers dulled her physical and emotional pain. Donna felt abandoned by the world and overwhelmed by her struggles. As a result, she began to distance herself from Ghulam, even though he genuinely cared for her. Things quickly deteriorated. She became increasingly dependent on her medications, to the point where she could not function without them. This led her to raise her dosages and steal more often. Eventually, her behavior attracted attention. She was caught in the act, and there was no way to deny it. Her dismissal from the clinic was shocking, and she faced multiple criminal charges. Ghulam quickly intervened to defend his wife, managed the situation to safeguard her reputation. Thanks to his actions, their friends and family never learned about Donna's problem. Rather than facing jail time, she paid a hefty fine and committed to rehabilitation at a specialized center. Ghulam chose the facility himself and organized Donna's stay, informing relatives, neighbors, and friends that she was on vacation. No one doubted him. He stayed calm, convincing, continued to appear cheerful and friendly. At the rehab center, Donna, who is now in her 40s, met a younger man named Damien Bradford, who was 23 years old. Damien had a history of multiple offenses for distributing illegal substances and ended up in rehab after a serious overdose that almost killed him. Despite their age difference, Donna and Damien quickly became very close, spent a lot of time together. They faced similar challenges. Although their relationship was unexpected, their bond deepened rapidly. What started as simple conversations turned into a passionate affair. Donna's husband was nearing 70 years old. Due to his age and health problems, their physical relationship had significantly diminished. In contrast, Damien was young, energetic, fit, and undeniably attractive. He dedicated a lot of time to the gym, often used steroids and various supplements to maintain his physique. It's unclear why Damien was attracted to a woman 2 decades his senior, but for Donna, he felt like a breath of fresh air, rekindling emotions she thought were long gone. She fully embraced this connection, quickly became emotionally invested. Even though the rehabilitation center had strict rules prohibiting romantic relationships among patients, the two secretly began dating. They found secluded spots to meet, such as storage rooms and restrooms. The thrill of being caught only seemed to strengthen their connection. Donna became so invested in the relationship that she couldn't envision her life without him. Their romance continued after they left the rehab facility. Damien was a caring partner who gave Donna plenty of attention, called her sweet names, and truly enjoyed making her feel valued. He may have developed genuine feelings for Donna, a sophisticated and self-assured woman who clearly looked after herself. At this point, Donna was not working anymore but had complete access to her husband's bank accounts and could spend as she pleased. Ghulam never scrutinized her spending or asked about her expenses. Taking advantage of this, Donna started showering Damien with lavish gifts, designer clothes, and accessories, while also covering all of his living expenses. She even rented a cozy apartment for them to meet privately. As a result, Damien became financially dependent on his wealthy partner, but neither of them appeared to have any concerns about it. When warned about his wife's affair, Ghulam had long suspected that something was off and noticed changes in Donna's behavior, but he had decided not to confront her about it. He realized that she was much younger and had emotional and physical needs that he could no longer fulfill. Gradually, he accepted that their passion had faded. Instead of reacting angrily, he calmly asked Donna if they should consider ending their relationship. Donna was shocked to learn that Ghulam knew about her affair. She explained that it was merely a temporary distraction that happened during a tough period in her life. She had met the younger man while in rehab, when she was feeling vulnerable and needed support. He seemed to understand her struggles better than anyone else. Despite this, she assured Ghulam that he was still the person she loved, promised to end her relationship with the younger man, emphasizing that he didn't truly matter to her. Ghulam felt moved by her words. He chose to trust her, forgave her, and decided they could move forward together as if nothing had happened. Damien had become Donna's overwhelming dependency, which she couldn't easily escape. She felt a strong attraction to him and, in his presence, experienced feelings of youth, desire, and genuine care. Her thoughts were focused on one main goal: eliminating the obstacle to her happiness, her husband. The affair continued at the apartment she had rented for Damien. Although they were more cautious now, Ghulam believed their relationship was over, while Donna planned to maintain it. When they couldn't meet in person, they stayed in constant contact, calling up to 20 times a day and exchanging hundreds of messages. Donna had no plans to let go of her boyfriend. Donna had selfish reasons for not wanting a divorce. She feared losing her financial stability. Before marrying Ghulam, they signed a prenuptial agreement that would limit her settlement to $250,000 if they separated. However, after Ghulam found out about her infidelity, he tried to keep the situation under control and offered to raise her settlement to $1 million. Donna turned down the offer, persuading Ghulam that she still loved him and wished to save their marriage. In reality, though, Ghulam's wealth had increased to nearly $12 million. Motivated by greed, Donna wanted everything, immediate access to wealth so she and Damien could live the way they wanted without restrictions. Every time they met, Donna portrayed Ghulam as a controlling tyrant who emotionally suffocated her and treated her like an object. She wanted Damien to see her husband as an enemy who deserved revenge for the emotional pain he supposedly caused her. Her manipulative stories worked well. A dark plan began to form in Donna's troubled mind, one she intended to execute with the help of her young lover. She believed that since Ghulam was much older and had several chronic health issues, his time was running out anyway. So, she thought, why not hasten the inevitable? To Donna, this seemed like the ideal solution. No one would disrupt her new life, and she would legally inherit all of Ghulam's assets, properties, and wealth as his surviving spouse. She shared her plan with Damien, offering him half of Ghulam's fortune in exchange for his help with a problem. Damien quickly agreed. The promise of a large payout clouded his judgment. Together, they began devising the crime. People who knew Ghulam were aware that he often carried a large amount of cash in his wallet. He frequently joked that anyone who tried to rob him would leave satisfied. Donna and Damien decided to exploit this, planning the crime to appear as a failed mugging that escalated into a tragic event. Developing the plan took nearly 2 months, as Donna and her accomplice carefully considered every detail to avoid mistakes. During this time, Donna portrayed the perfect devoted wife. She stayed close to her husband, accompanied him everywhere, and made sure no one suspected any issues in their marriage. Friends and neighbors genuinely thought they were a happy couple, and even Ghulam was convinced of it. Their initial attempt to execute the plan did not go well. Damien was meant to ambush Ghulam as he left the hospital and headed to his car in the parking lot. However, the area was crowded with people, prompting Damien to back out due to the fear of too many witnesses. It took them another month to devise a new strategy. This time, they aimed to attack on a deserted road where no one would be present to intervene. The plan was straightforward. Damien would follow their car at a safe distance, and Donna would stop at a designated location, pretending there was a medical emergency. They set the date for Friday, May 13, 2005. On that day, Dr. Ghulam planned to visit a neighboring state to look at a house he wanted to buy as a wedding gift for his nephew, Farik Munda. Donna offered to go with him, but her 72-year-old mother, Dorothy Smouse, who was visiting at the time, insisted on joining. Donna tried to talk her out of it, but Ghulam didn't see any issue with her coming along and agreed to let his mother-in-law participate. Damien, dressed entirely in black and wearing ski goggles to conceal his identity, waited in his car for a message from Donna indicating that their vehicle had left the house. Once he received the signal, he followed the predetermined route, maintaining a safe distance behind. After stopping to refuel, Donna took over driving to keep control over their timing. While traveling along a deserted highway, she pretended to feel ill and pulled over, claiming she needed to take some medication. At that moment, a black Volkswagen approached from behind. A man in ski goggles jumped out, ran to the passenger side where Ghulam was sitting, pointed a gun at him, and demanded his wallet. Ghulam complied without resistance, handed over his wallet. However, as soon as the attacker received the money, he shot Ghulam in the head and quickly returned to his vehicle, driving away rapidly. Ghulam died instantly from the gunshot. Donna then called emergency services, crying and screaming as she begged them to save her husband. She acted so convincingly like a distraught widow that, at first, no one suspected she could have been involved in the incident. Inconsistencies in the testimonies appeared quickly. Right from the initial interviews, it was evident that something was not right. Donna stated she didn't see the attacker or his vehicle, everything happened too quickly, and she was in shock. In contrast, her mother provided a different account. She claimed she saw both the shooter and the car clearly. According to her, the person who shot her son-in-law was a young black man driving a black Volkswagen. This assertion visibly upset Donna, who argued with her mother, insisting that she must have been mistaken. However, her mother remained firm and began to add more specific details. Donna contended that they had stopped the car because Ghulam requested it, while her mother claimed it was Donna who stopped the car, as illness. Investigators were also puzzled as to why the assailant only targeted one person while leaving two possible witnesses unharmed. 2 days after the incident, Dr. Ghulam's widow held a press conference where she answered reporters' questions with tears in her eyes. She made a heartfelt appeal to the public, urging anyone with information about the case to come forward and help with the investigation. Shortly after the press conference, the police received a phone call from a woman who claimed that Donna was actually the mastermind behind the incident and that she had been assisted by her lover, Damien Bradford. The caller also provided details such as the make and license plate number of Damien's car, as well as his home address. This caller considered herself to be Damien's fiancée. She had been closely monitoring the couple and shared all the information she had gathered. On the same day, police arrested Damien and searched his apartment. Although he had managed to get rid of the weapon, for some unknown reason, he kept the victim's wallet and brought it home. Inside the wallet, they found about $3,000 in cash, several bank cards belonging to Dr. Ghulam, and a photo of Donna. Authorities also discovered clothes with small blood stains that matched the doctor's. Damien was arrested and taken into custody. He mistakenly believed that his wealthy lover would help him and somehow secure his release. However, Donna, fearing for her own safety, chose to stay silent, hoping that all the blame would fall on Damien, especially since the evidence against him was overwhelming. When prosecutors told Damien that he might face the death penalty, he decided to cooperate with them in exchange for a shorter sentence. He disclosed the entire plan, provided text messages and documents, including evidence that Donna had purchased the car he was driving. In July 2007, Damien pleaded guilty to the crime and testified in court, explaining all the details of the scheme. Because he cooperated, he was sentenced to 17.5 years in prison. Donna was eventually sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on September 21, 2007, for the murder for hire conviction, with an additional 360 months to run concurrently on the remaining charges. Despite Donna's numerous appeals, the court upheld the original sentence. She is currently serving her sentence at the Tallahassee Federal Correctional Institution in Tallahassee, Florida. After being released on supervised release in 2020, Damian Bradford was arrested again on July 29, 2022, following an altercation with state police at the Franklin Mini Mart in Aliquippa. During his struggle with an officer, Bradford fired a shot at the officer, hitting him in the leg. Damian was convicted of attempted murder and aggravated assault on the officer, sentenced to 36.5 to 73 years in state prison in November 2023. In December of that year, the district court added a consecutive 10-year sentence for violating the terms of his supervised release. As of press time, Damian is serving his sentence at the Albion State Correctional Institution, located in Albion, Pennsylvania. The murder of Dr. Ghulam Munda on May 13, 2005, shattered the illusion of a perfect life in Hermitage, Pennsylvania, exposing a chilling tale of addiction and betrayal. Donna Munda, 23 years younger than her devoted husband, succumbed to a dependency on painkillers and an obsessive affair with Damian Bradford, leading her to orchestrate Ghulam's death for his $12 million estate. Ghulam's kindness and medical legacy endure in the community's memory, marked by tributes in 2025, while his tragic end serves as a stark warning of addiction's power to corrupt and destroy, urging greater vigilance to prevent such devastations. Lori K. Soares Hacking was born on December 31, 1976, and was adopted by Thelma and Iraldo Soares. They formerly lived in Fullerton, California. Iraldo is a Spanish and Portuguese teacher at Sunny Hills High School and a native of Piracicaba, Brazil. He met Thelma while they were both serving as missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Rio de Janeiro. Lori's parents divorced in 1987. Thelma and Lori moved to Orem, Utah the following year. In Orem, she attended Orem High School, where she was known for her organizational skills, determination, and vibrant personality. During high school, Lori met Mark Douglas Hacking. Their relationship quickly grew. They became a well-known couple, attending all the homecoming dances and proms together, appearing just like any other young couple in love. Mark, who was helpful and reliable, often spent time at Lori's house, assisting with errands, home repairs. This earned him a special place in Lori's family's hearts. Lori's brother jokingly felt jealous, as Mark received more attention from their mother and Lori than he did. However, Lori's family genuinely appreciated Mark's kindness and support. Lori and Mark's youthful romance blossomed into a strong relationship, leading to their marriage on August 7, 1999. By 2004, Lori was working as an assistant manager at a financial institution, while Mark, who had just graduated from the University of Utah, was preparing to start medical school at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Mark's decision to pursue medicine was expected, as he came from a well-educated family with several doctors, including his father and brothers, while another brother worked in government. In the summer of 2004, Lori and Mark planned to move to North Carolina. Lori, who was pregnant, was excited about the relocation, as was her mother, Thelma, who was eager to become a grandmother. Thelma hoped for a granddaughter with big curls like Lori's. On July 19, 2004, Lori, who was 27 years old and 5 months pregnant, suddenly disappeared. At around 5:15 a.m., she went for her usual jog at Memory Grove Park and City Creek Canyon before heading to work in Salt Lake City. When she did not return that afternoon, her boss contacted Mark. Concerned for her safety, Mark quickly called the police to report her missing. Mark arrived at Memory Grove Park at 10:07 a.m., aware that it was the last place Lori was supposed to be. He found her car in the parking lot, but the park was unusually quiet, making his heart race with fear. Patrol officers greeted him outside the park and updated detectives on Lori's disappearance. They feared the worst, thinking she might have fallen into the canyon, gotten injured, and become trapped in the thick woods. Given the situation, the patrol officers believed it was essential to involve homicide detectives. The steep canyon walls heightened their concern, as they worried that the pregnant woman might have been hurt and needed urgent help. Lori Hacking's mysterious disappearance shocked the community, leading to a flood of support from friends and family. Her husband, Mark Hacking, was visibly distraught as he appealed for help in locating his missing wife. His public requests for assistance caught the attention of various media outlets, and he eagerly spoke to any reporter asking about Lori, expressing his deep worry and asking for help in the search. Officers from the Salt Lake City Police Department are actively investigating the case and have organized a large-scale search at Memory Grove Park. They are seeking the help of at least 3,000 volunteers to assist in searching for Lori or any evidence that she may have been present in the area. Many homes are located along the path leading to Memory Grove Park, where Lori was reportedly last seen. The officers are thoroughly canvassing the area, looking for anyone who might have witnessed something unusual. Lori is easily recognizable with her distinctive bushy dark curls, and the officers believe residents would likely remember her. Their hopes were momentarily lifted when a woman claimed to have seen Lori near Memory Grove that morning, but she later retracted her statement. As the search for Lori continued, the Salt Lake City Police Department established a command post near the entrance of the park. Mark's brothers and Lori's mother arrived at the scene. One of Mark's brothers suggested checking a homeless encampment in the canyon, voicing concerns about the potential involvement of those living there in Lori's disappearance. The detectives understood the importance of exploring all avenues and decided to investigate the encampment. There are no suspicious signs here. They realized that uncovering the truth would be challenging and that every detail needed thorough examination. Detectives arrived at Mark and Lori Hacking's home. They were already aware that in many missing persons cases, the partner is often the primary suspect. They also considered the possibility that Lori might have had a romantic relationship with someone else, which could have played a role in her disappearance. The detectives asked Mark for permission to enter their apartment and to obtain a recent photograph of Lori for their missing person flyer. Mark agreed, allowing them to enter the apartment. After entering the residence, the detectives asked Mark for permission to do a quick search, which he agreed to. During the search, one detective found a red handbag that belonged to Lori. Inside the handbag was Lori's wallet, complete with her identification and credit cards. The detectives were puzzled as to why Lori would go to Memory Grove Park for exercise, leaving her car near the entrance but not taking her purse with her. Additionally, the detective spotted a large bouquet of flowers on the kitchen counter, which led her to believe that Mark had bought them for Lori as an apology. This detail raised her suspicion about potential issues in their marriage, as she recalled that husbands often give large bouquets to express remorse. While investigating the bathroom, the detective noted that it was exceptionally clean and had a strong smell of bleach, suggesting someone had recently scrubbed it with disinfectant. This finding intrigued the detective, as it indicated an effort to hide something. In the bedroom, she observed a set of sheets on the bed that looked brand new, with visible creases and no signs of having been washed. When she checked Lori's jewelry box, she noticed that Lori's wedding band was missing, which struck her as odd. The detective wondered why a happily married woman would not be wearing her wedding ring. Mark met YTH, a detective at the police department, for an interview. The detective asked him questions about his marriage, and Mark claimed that everything was fine. Given the growing evidence and suspicions against him, this statement seemed questionable. Mark mentioned that he and Lori were packing to move to North Carolina, where he would soon start medical school. This information caught the detective's attention, and she became curious about his intended specialty. When she asked, Mark surprised her by saying he would specialize in oncology. As the interview progressed, the detective closely observed Mark's behavior. He seemed to be crying, but they never saw any tears, which made them suspicious and led them to believe that he might be pretending. They felt deep inside that something terrible had happened to Lori, suspected Mark was involved, but they still hoped Lori was alive and could be saved. The detectives asked Mark for permission to search his red truck. While they searched the vehicle, Mark was present. On the seat, the detective found a receipt from a mattress company dated the same day Lori went missing. This raised questions. Why would Mark buy a new mattress on the day his pregnant wife disappeared? Determined to find more evidence, they returned to Mark's apartment and asked for his signature on a consent form that would allow a more thorough search. Mark agreed, giving the detectives permission to enter his home. Once inside, the detective confronted him with a receipt they had found. They also noticed a new mattress on Mark and Lori's bed. This finding prompted further questioning. The detective asked Mark about the mismatched mattress and box spring, suggesting it had been bought recently. Mark's reaction indicated that this struck a nerve. While continuing their search, the detectives made another discovery that heightened their suspicions. They found several knives on the nightstand next to Mark's bed. One knife was hidden in a sheath, and when they examined it, they noticed red stains on the blade, which they suspected were human blood. When questioned about it, Mark claimed he used the knife for hunting. When the detective found the knife, they stopped the consensual search of the house and called in a crime scene investigation team. They started working on getting a search warrant because they believed something serious had happened in Lori's home. While checking the area, detectives noticed a trash can in the parking lot, leading them to suspect that Mark had killed his wife and dumped her body in the trash. Around the same time, the night watch officer informed the police investigating Lori's disappearance that Mark had been seen running around naked at a local motel. This incident increased suspicions about Mark's involvement and added to the evidence suggesting he played a role in Lori's disappearance. When an officer arrived at the motel, he found Mark behaving oddly and completely naked. However, the officer observed that Mark had the presence of mind to put on his shoes before running around the parking lot, which made the officer suspect that Mark was pretending to act strangely. A person in an abnormal state would not even realize they were walking barefoot. That afternoon, a detective visited Mark at the hospital and was surprised to see that he showed no signs of emotional distress. Instead, he appeared relaxed and content, enjoying pizza and watching television. The detective began the interview by asking the same questions as before. Mark maintained that Lori had never returned home from her morning jog. During the interview, Douglas Hacking, Mark's father, was present and urged him to be truthful if he had done something wrong. However, Mark looked back at his father with a determined expression, insisting that he had not done anything. Douglas was confident in his son's honesty and believed him. While the investigation into Lori's disappearance was ongoing, detectives received information from officials at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. They informed the detectives that Mark Hacking, who was supposed to start an oncology program there, was not enrolled and that they had no record of him. They presented this information to Thelma, Lori's mother, hoping to clarify Mark's true intentions. Initially, Thelma refused to accept the detectives' claims, perceiving them as mere speculation. However, her disbelief wavered when the detectives revealed that Mark had never graduated from the University of Utah. This shocking revelation made Thelma reconsider past events, and she recalled signs that something was off. At Mark's supposed graduation ceremony, she remembered hearing him sick in the bathroom, which prevented him from attending the event. They believed that Mark's deception had finally caught up with him, which might have contributed to Lori's disappearance. On July 20, 2004, one day after Lori went missing, a store clerk from a nearby shop reported an important detail to the detectives. The clerk recalled that on the evening of July 18 at 9:45 p.m., Lori and Mark entered the store and bought a soda. The detectives reviewed the store's CCTV footage from that time and confirmed the clerk's story. The video showed Lori wearing green scrub-style pants and a tan shirt, along with Mark as they entered the store. This was believed to be the last confirmed sighting of Lori alive. The search for Lori lasted 3 days and involved hundreds of volunteers. Her mother, Thelma, made a heartfelt appeal to the public, urging anyone who might have Lori to release her, emphasizing the extreme heat in the canyon, which often exceeded 100 degrees in July. Despite the challenging conditions, the search efforts remained strong. Meanwhile, Mark was in the hospital recovering from a mental health crisis. His brothers, Scott and Lance Hacking, growing suspicious of his potential involvement in Lori's disappearance, confronted him again. On July 24, 2004, Mark eventually confessed to killing Lori. He explained that she had found out he was not actually a graduate of the University of Utah, where he claimed to be attending medical school in North Carolina. This revelation devastated Lori, making her feel betrayed. Before she could file for divorce, Mark took drastic action by shooting her and disposing of her body in a dumpster. After Mark admitted to his brothers, the search for Lori in the canyon shifted to the landfill. Nearly 30 officers were sent to the 10-acre landfill to search for her body. In the 2 days following the disposal, they had to sift through a massive amount of waste. First-degree murder charges were filed against Mark Hacking on August 9, 2004. The search for Lori was extensive and physically challenging, especially with the high temperatures. Many agencies and professionals worked together in this effort. They used cadaver dogs and equipment like earth movers to help find any evidence. These tools were essential in narrowing down the search area and uncovering important leads. On October 1, 2004, at 8:20 a.m., human remains were discovered in the landfill. This was a major breakthrough in the case, bringing hope for answers regarding Lori's disappearance. The remains were carefully examined and identified using dental records, confirming that they belonged to Lori Hacking. This information provided a clear conclusion to the search, offering some closure for her family. On April 15, 2005, Lori's husband, Mark Hacking, pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. He was sentenced on June 6, 2005, to 6 years to life in prison. The Utah State Board of Pardons later stated that he would not be eligible for parole until 2035. That means Hacking will face a minimum of 30 years in prison. Board Chairman Mike Sibbett emphasized that the hearing does not guarantee a release date. He stated that there were several aggravating factors in Hacking's case that merited a stay. He emphasized that Hacking obstructed justice by disposing of Lori's body and falsely claiming she was missing. In honor of Lori, her family chose to remove Mark Hacking's last name from her headstone. This decision aimed to celebrate Lori's memory and assert her independence in light of Mark's actions, emphasizing her individuality and the strength she showed throughout her life. A year after Mark Hacking was convicted of murdering his wife, Lori Hacking, it was revealed that he had been involved in illegal activities while in the Central Utah Correctional Facility in Gunnison, Utah. He was found to be selling personal items, such as autographed memorabilia and other prison-related items, on a website called Murder Auction. Initially, Mark denied the allegations, but later, after an investigation, he agreed to stop his online sales. This revelation caused public outrage and raised new concerns about the integrity of the prison system. Michelle Rivera was born on November 18, 1969, as the fourth of 7 children in her family. She grew up in a small village in the Philippines, where her family struggled with poverty. Her parents could barely provide for their children. From a young age, Michelle was known for her beauty, intelligence, and kindness. She helped her mother with household chores, took care of her younger siblings. Her parents emphasized the importance of education for success, so Michelle focused diligently on her studies. When she turned 16, she moved to attend college for a degree in business administration. Unfortunately, her parents could not afford her tuition, and after the first semester, she had to drop out. Instead of returning home, Michelle stayed with her aunt, who lived near a U.S. naval base. There, she worked at a clothing store and learned English, hoping to eventually move to the United States. During this time, she met Americans for the first time, which fueled her dream of immigrating to the U.S. for a better life. At the age of 18, she reached out to a dating agency that connected her with men from the United States. This pursuit of a husband overseas introduced her to Jonathan Nice. Jonathan was born in 1950. He was the eldest of 4 sons in a deeply religious Catholic family. Although he was quiet and reserved, he had a unique perspective on life. He was also quite creative, with a passion for writing stories and poems. In 1957, the Nice family moved to a bigger house in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, after Jonathan's father got a better-paying job. Jonathan was very good at mathematics and the natural sciences, but he had trouble making friends, especially with girls. He started attending Temple University in Philadelphia in 1968. After 8 years, he earned a bachelor's degree, and 2 years later, he completed a master's degree. By 1983, he had received his doctorate, began working on his dissertation in Los Angeles. After successfully defending his thesis, he found a job at East Carolina University in Greenville by 1988. Ambitious Jonathan became a professor of medical sciences. However, he faced challenges in his personal life. His first marriage to a woman of a different faith ended partly because of their religious differences. Despite this, Jonathan remained hopeful and continued to seek new love. In 1988, Michelle got her first letter from him. He introduced himself as a successful and wealthy professor. The accompanying photo showed him as young, tall, and handsome, with blonde hair. What caught Michelle's attention the most was that he was American. Excited, she replied to his letters, sharing details about herself and her dreams. Over the next few months, they developed a romantic relationship, sending letters, postcards, and photos to each other, even started making phone calls. In October 1989, Jonathan shared his feelings for Michelle, and shortly after, they decided to meet in person. By May 1990, he announced that he had purchased a plane ticket to the Philippines for their wedding. Michelle was excited about this meeting but was taken aback when they finally met, as Jonathan looked quite different from the young man in the photo. He was an overweight, older man with medium-length blonde hair, appearing much older than his actual age. Despite her surprise, Michelle kept her feelings hidden, and they spent the next 2 days together. She later confessed that she had doubts about the wedding from the start, not only because he didn't resemble the photo, but also because some uncomfortable truths were becoming clear. However, after spending time together, she began to feel attached to him. Jonathan had changed his birth date on his passport to make himself younger. His marriage certificate stated that he was born on May 26, 1958, which suggested he was 32, but in reality, he was 40 years old. 21-year-old Michelle felt uncertain about her decision, but her wish to move to the United States was stronger. After their marriage was registered, Jonathan went back to the U.S., leaving Michelle in the Philippines to sort out her American visa. Upon returning, he kept their marriage a secret from everyone, including his parents and brothers, acting as if nothing had happened. During this time, he attended a cancer conference in Hawaii and also traveled to the Philippines, where he was supposed to give lectures. People assumed he was just on a business trip. Meanwhile, Jonathan opened a bank account for Michelle and sent money to support her family. He also bought them a new house in the Philippines. However, by winter, Michelle had still not moved in with her husband. Her visa wouldn't be ready until the end of March the following year. Jonathan then bought Michelle a one-way ticket to California for their honeymoon. In April 1991, Michelle left her family to fly to California. The deception continued. Jonathan was embarrassed about how he met Michelle through correspondence in the Philippines, so he concocted a story about falling in love at first sight during a conference there. He maintained this lie for years, and Michelle supported it because she was not proud of her past either. After they returned to New Jersey, Jonathan rented an apartment for them, and a few months later, Michelle became pregnant. They welcomed their first child, Alex. Both parents doted on him. Jonathan devoted all his free time to his son, and Michelle frequently sent pictures to her parents. Michelle became pregnant again in early 1993, and on November, she gave birth to their second son, Trevor. During this time, Jonathan collaborated with other experts to enhance asthma medications. In the spring of 1995, Jonathan left the university to start his own pharmaceutical company. He began promoting a new drug, claiming it had been tested on animals and had no side effects. Slowly, the money started coming in. Those who worked with Jonathan recognized that he was, at best, overstating the truth. However, he had a talent for presenting things in a way that made others believe him. Small falsehoods turned into a larger deception. Jonathan appeared convincing and continued to attract investments for drug development. The business was expanding, and the drug trials seemed very promising, at least on paper. By the end of 2000, Jonathan was getting ready for drug trials in London. Their relationship seemed strong, they were enjoying life together. They had a daughter, Samantha, and lived in a spacious new house in an upscale neighborhood of Hopewell Township, New Jersey, a charming town with a population of 4,000, situated on an old horse farm. However, Jonathan felt the property wasn't green enough, so in 2001, he hired a gardener named Miguel de Jesus. Miguel was a 31-year-old Puerto Rican with years of experience in landscape design and great references. He completed the landscaping for their home at a cost of $50,000. Jonathan invested generously in the project. Michelle, who did not have a job and spent most of her time at home, interacted with Miguel more frequently than Jonathan did, leading to a mutual attraction between them. By spring 2002, the business started facing issues. Jonathan had to cut his staff down to 12 employees. The company invested around $40 million in different studies, but they yielded no convincing results. Jonathan felt mounting pressure from investors, and funding for his projects was halted. Desperate for cash, he took out a $200,000 loan against his home. These financial struggles began to take a toll on his marriage. During this time, Michelle confided in a friend that she wanted a divorce. In the summer of 2002, her father came to visit the Nice family and intended to stay for a while to spend time with his daughter and grandchildren. He often spent months with them, cooking Filipino dishes. During this visit, he observed firsthand the deterioration of the marriage. Jonathan was drinking heavily, and the couple argued almost daily. The parents was revealed that Jonathan had lied about his age, which shocked everyone, including Michelle. The troubled state of their marriage continued to decline. She made the decision to get a divorce, but she knew it would require careful planning. The financial situation was entirely in Jonathan's hands, leaving Michelle feeling trapped. She needed help to overcome this challenge. That's why Miguel de Jesus appeared to be a promising choice. He had lived in the US for 14 years, worked in landscape design, and had a steady job with regular clients. Miguel had been married for 5 years following his previous divorce. He had not paid alimony and had accumulated significant debt. He was also hiding because a warrant had been issued to freeze his accounts. To conceal his identity, he used a fake ID with a different name. Michelle started giving him expensive gifts to show her affection. A secret relationship formed between them. As tensions rose, Michelle and Jonathan grew more distant. In January 2003, Michelle's friend became worried when she couldn't reach her by phone, fearing something was wrong. She was aware that Jonathan had problems with alcohol, was facing significant financial struggles, and that a divorce was imminent. Concerned that he might have harmed Michelle, the friend decided to visit their house to check on her. However, Michelle was hesitant to talk about her husband and avoided discussing their relationship altogether. Eventually, the friend left. In the following months, the friend made several attempts to reach out to Michelle, but each effort failed. It appeared that Michelle was intentionally avoiding everyone. She slowly withdrew from her family and friends and did not return their calls. In February 2003, Michelle traveled to the Philippines to see her family, with Jonathan joining her. Initially, everything seemed to be going well, but soon the effects of her alcohol abuse became evident, leading to daily arguments between them. A group of investors started talks to purchase Jonathan Nice's company, which resulted in him facing intense pressure and eventually losing his CEO position. In March 2003, even with his financial difficulties, Jonathan maintained a lavish lifestyle, with monthly mortgage payments of around $6,500. He continued to hide his financial issues from everyone, even planned to launch a new business. He focused on research to create drugs aimed at preventing lung cancer in smokers. He rarely left his home, dedicated himself to his research, and even authored a book of poems for children. This situation made it difficult for Michelle to meet her lover, Miguel. As her anxiety grew, she started coming up with various excuses to secretly maintain her affair. On June 26, 2003, Miguel's wife found out about his affair and kicked him out of their home. Meanwhile, Jonathan was aware of his wife's infidelity but didn't show it at first. On July 10, Jonathan went to the police to report that a man had called him twice, demanding $500,000 in exchange for video and audio recordings of intimate moments with his wife, Michelle. Jonathan recognized the caller's voice as Miguel. On July 23, Jonathan called Miguel and threatened him, insisting that he should never approach Michelle again. Miguel, however, denied having any connection with Michelle. After these events, Michelle lost access to her bank account. Jonathan became angry and restricted her funds, providing only $300 a month for groceries. This situation led Michelle into deep despair, and she stopped sending money to her relatives in the Philippines. When their youngest daughter turned 5, Michelle enrolled her daughter in kindergarten. With more free time, she took a part-time job as a consultant in the cosmetics department, which gave her a sense of financial independence and allowed her to escape her husband's control. To stop his wife from keeping in touch with Miguel, Jonathan went to the police and reported that Miguel had made threats against them. This helped them secure a restraining order against Miguel. During this time, Jonathan faced depression and started consulting a psychiatrist. He received medication that was supposed to help him, but instead, it worsened his emotional state. One day, while at his parents' house, he broke down in tears and admitted that Michelle had a boyfriend, which left him frightened of losing her. In an attempt to regain control, he tried to convince Michelle to quit her job, but she refused to comply. Jonathan launched a perfume company, hoping to work alongside his wife. He planned to replicate the scent of the national flower of the Philippines and believed this venture would bring them financial success, strengthen their marriage, and restore their relationship. However, his possessive behavior worsened the situation. Michelle continued her affairs, did not wear her wedding ring to work. During Thanksgiving, when they met Jonathan's parents, the tension was palpable. They barely communicated or interacted with one another. January 15, 2004, began as a normal day for the family. Schools were closed due to snowfall, keeping the children at home. Michelle went shopping while Jonathan spent time with the younger children. After lunch, Michelle returned home to get ready for her evening shift, leaving around 4 p.m. Jonathan tried to call Michelle several times, but she didn't answer. After her shift ended, CCTV footage showed her leaving the store and walking to her car. At 9:54 p.m., she entered Miguel's car. They rented a motel room for 2 hours, during which Jonathan continued to call Michelle, but she chose not to respond. After they were intimate, they talked for a bit, and Michelle mentioned that she suspected Jonathan was tracking her. Once their time together was over, Michelle got into her car, planning to drive home. At 12:30 a.m., she left the parking lot to drive approximately 15 kilometers home. Meanwhile, Jonathan, unable to sleep, waited outside their home for his wife. Early the next morning, a man was driving on a deserted road in rural New Jersey, heading to a friend's place. While driving, he glanced at a shallow creek where he planned to go fishing later. Suddenly, he spotted a dark car with its engine running, parked oddly on the riverbank with its front wheels partially submerged in the water. He thought little of it, assuming it was likely a local fisherman or deer hunter who had stopped for a reason. So, he continued driving without stopping. About an hour later, the man returned with his friend and noticed the car still in the same spot. This seemed unusual, so he decided to investigate. The engine was running, but the headlights were off. On the passenger side, he discovered blood. Concerned, he called the police. Within an hour, a team of forensic experts and detectives arrived from both the local district and a neighboring one, as violent incidents were rare in this area. It was cordoned off and searched thoroughly, even from the air. At first, it appeared to be an accident. However, the condition of the body contradicted this. The car showed no signs of damage, which was impossible. Additionally, the victim was barefoot, which added to the suspicion that this was a murder made to look like an accident. The car's registration number was verified in the database, revealing that it belonged to Jonathan Nice. Sitting in the driver's seat was Michelle, 34, who had a fractured skull. The injuries appeared too severe to have been caused by an accident, prompting authorities to reconsider. Notably, the driver's seat was pushed all the way back, which was unusual since Michelle was too small to drive comfortably in that position. There was also a suitcase containing women's items wedged under the seat. Large footprints leading from the car to the road indicated that a man had walked away from the vehicle. The snow footprints became a significant piece of evidence in the investigation. At 9:13 a.m., 2 officers arrived at the Nice house to speak with Jonathan. Earlier, around 6:13 a.m., another police officer had responded to an alarm in the garage, but Jonathan was now unaccounted for. The children answered the door. They told the police that their father had left, their mother had gone to work the day before and had not come back. At this point, the detectives realized there were significant issues in Michelle and Jonathan's relationship. They waited for Jonathan, who recounted the events of the previous evening. He had not seen her since 4 p.m., which wasn't surprising due to their family issues. After learning that Michelle was dead, Jonathan was informed of his rights because his family was under suspicion. He shared details about their troubled relationship, his daily routine, and mentioned a gardener who extorted money from him and threatened their family. He appeared indifferent about his wife's death. However, at the end of the meet, he broke down in tears when he asked how to explain her death to their children. The detectives interviewed Michelle's friend, Larissa Seuss. She had no knowledge of any physical violence between the couple but was aware that Michelle was unhappy and wanted to leave her husband. Jonathan did not notify Michelle's family about her death. They learned of it through a newspaper article. Jonathan's father called him after receiving information from the doctor about the accident. A Filipino man had been living with them for several months and witnessed their relationship grow. He suspected that Jonathan might have tampered with the car to cause the accident. The medical examiner's findings revealed the severe violence Michelle experienced. She had 3 deep lacerations on her forehead, exposing her bone. A blunt force injury to the back of her head caused bleeding, but it did not kill her instantly. There was even bloody foam in her lungs, suggesting she survived for a while after the injury. The autopsy report confirmed that she died from blunt force trauma to her head, which resulted in a skull fracture and hemorrhage. When the police interviewed Miguel de Jesus, he quickly called a lawyer. He confessed that he had been in a relationship with Michelle for several months. Miguel provided a detailed account of the last evening he spent with her before her death. He did not appear suspicious and had an alibi. Miguel stated that Michelle had often told him that Jonathan was physically abusing her and had even restrained her to the bed as punishment. As a result, the police secured a search warrant for the Nice family's house. As the investigation continues, Jonathan becomes increasingly suspicious. When detectives came to arrest him, he took almost 10 minutes to answer the door, suggesting he was trying to conceal something. It was later discovered that he had quickly removed the soles from his shoes, cut them into small pieces, and hidden them in various locations around the house, including among some Christmas decorations. The patterns on the soles of the shoes were later matched to evidence found at the crime scene. During his questioning, Jonathan's first comment was about Michelle's infidelity. He still repeated the events from the previous night and the day, admitting that he last saw his wife alive around 4 p.m. as she was getting ready for her job. After she left, he never saw her again. When police raided Nice's home, they found a blood-stained baseball bat and Jonathan's clothes soaked in pink water in the washing machine. Police also found blood in the garage and bloody towels hidden in the chimney. The investigation confirmed that all of the stains were from the victim's blood. When directly asked about the suspicion of killing his wife, Jonathan denied it, claiming he had been framed and attempting to shift the blame to his wife's lover. Over time, he began to show signs of distress. Jonathan later told police that his wife had attacked him in the garage with what he believed was a knife when she got home. According to him, Michelle fell to the floor of the garage, and he accidentally smashed her head into the floor during the struggle that resulted in her death. Afterward, Jonathan placed Michelle in the driver's seat of her car and used an ice pick to operate the accelerator and brake pedals while sitting in the passenger seat. He drove about a mile until he found a creek, then drove off the road and into the water. At that point, he left the car running and walked home. In the garage, authorities discovered cut-out shoe soles hidden throughout, which matched the footprints found at the scene of the accident. Additionally, there was evidence of blood in the garage. The prosecution claimed that Michelle wanted to leave the marriage, but Jonathan could not allow that to happen, so he attacked her. They believed that Jonathan made up a story about Miguel trying to blackmail him with intimate photos, perhaps in an attempt to scare off Miguel and save his marriage. Miguel testified that Jonathan had been aware of his wife's affair for a long time, suggesting that the murder was not a spontaneous act of passion but rather a premeditated one. Miguel also stated that Jonathan had threatened to kill him. Jonathan was desperate to save his marriage and did not want Michelle to leave amicably, which is why he aimed to remove Michelle. The prosecutor believed that Jonathan had been waiting for Michelle to return from seeing her lover that evening to confront her. As soon as she parked the car in the garage, he approached her, sparking an argument. They moved inside the house, where the fight continued, with Michelle stating her desire to leave and quickly packing her belongings. Jonathan eventually realized he had lost his wife after 15 years of marriage and that nothing could change that. When she got into the car with her things, he became furious, pulling her out with such strength that he nearly injured her arm. He then threw her onto the concrete floor and struck her on the back of the head with a bat. Despite being injured, Michelle tried to stand up but was slipping in her own blood. Jonathan continued to slam her head against the concrete. According to the medical examiner, Michelle survived for approximately 10 minutes after being hit before choking on her blood. Jonathan suddenly realized that he had killed Michelle. He placed her body in the driver's seat of the car, gathered up the bloody items, and put them in the trunk. It was about 2 a.m. He pushed the driver's seat back as far as it would go, sat next to her in the driver's seat, and drove out of the garage. Jonathan operated the pedals as if they were her feet, while keeping his hands on the steering wheel over hers. A couple of miles away, he found a narrow part of the river where he planned to drive the car into the water to make it look like an accident. However, he was careless and left behind a significant amount of evidence and footprints leading from the submerged car back to his home. He also forgot to move the driver's seat back into its original position, which further exposed his attempt to stage the scene. At around 3 a.m., Jonathan returned to the garage and started cleaning it thoroughly with paper towels and bleach. By about 6 a.m., he accidentally triggered the alarm, prompting a quick response from the police. In a hurry, he scattered bloody clothes and bloody towel into the chimney. After that, Jonathan went to bed and pretended to be asleep for the rest of the night. Jonathan Nice was charged with first-degree murder and concealment of evidence. His trial started in June 2005. He maintained that he had acted in self-defense. He professor employed a skilled lawyer who argued convincingly that Michelle and her lover had plotted to extort money from Jonathan and had intended to kill him that night. According to the lawyer, Jonathan managed to defend himself, which tragically led to Michelle's death. The defense also highlighted that Jonathan panicked upon realizing he had accidentally killed her. The question still lingered: if Jonathan was acting in self-defense, why didn't he call 911 right away to explain what happened? Why did he feel the need to cover up the incident? The lawyer suggested that Jonathan was afraid of being sent to prison. The defense attorney argued that Jonathan was too intelligent to kill his wife in such an obvious way by causing a head injury. As a brilliant scientist, he could have created a more subtle method to avoid detection, like developing a new poison. The defense attorney was convincing and successfully reduced the charge to manslaughter in a moment of passion. As a result, Jonathan received a lighter sentence of just 8 years. The judge showed leniency because Jonathan had made significant contributions to society, particularly in the battle against a deadly disease. After the verdict, Jonathan said he still loved Michelle and felt regret about how things had ended up. Even though he received a light sentence, an appeal was submitted in 2007, but it was denied. Jonathan's parents, who are U.S. citizens, were given custody of the children, Samantha, Alex, and Trevor, while the parents of Michelle, who are from the Philippines, were not granted custody. On December 5, 2010, Jonathan Nice was released from prison after serving 5 years of his 8-year sentence. He moved in with her parents and reunited with her 3 children. He wrote an e-book titled Under the Color of Law: The Deliberate Conviction of an Innocent Man and the Destruction of a Family, to clear his name. On February 5, 2020, Philly Voice reported that federal authorities had charged Jonathan Nice with selling counterfeit drugs to dog owners whose pets were suffering from terminal cancer. He allegedly falsely claimed that these drugs almost always restore the appetite, spirit, and energy of a cancer-stricken dog. He gave the fake treatments realistic-sounding names, Temexal and Natrosone, and claimed that the Food and Drug Administration funded his research. In reality, the drugs were simply random ingredients mixed together, and the FDA had no involvement with them. According to the Justice Department, the scam netted nearly $1 million from approximately 900 victims. In December 2022, a federal jury convicted Jonathan Nice of wire fraud and interstate transportation of misbranded veterinary drugs. He now faces up to 32 years in prison and a substantial fine. An accident is an event from which no one is immune. At any moment, something unexpected can occur that completely changes the usual course of events. However, not everyone is able to accept the death of a loved one, and sometimes an accident turns into a catalyst for even more bloodshed. On the evening of July 1, 2016, Roberta Smargiassi was heading to her mother's house. At that time, she was 33 years old. She had been handling her business all Friday and was planning to visit her relatives to share some good news. Roberta wanted to prepare a festive dinner to gather all her relatives later. She was excited and hurried to reach her parents' house as soon as possible, using her scooter. Before leaving, Roberta called her mother to say she would be arriving soon. Unfortunately, she was not destined to reach her loved ones. Roberta was riding her scooter along the road when she moved through the green light. In the other lane, a young man named Italo DeLisa was driving a Fiat Punto. He was only 21 years old. Despite the fact that the traffic light was red for him, he ignored it and continued driving. He did not notice the scooter that Roberta was riding. A collision occurred. After the impact, she crashed into the traffic light and fell onto the asphalt. The impact was quite strong, and she was thrown onto the sidewalk. Roberta sustained very serious injuries. Italo was confused but did not run away from the scene. He tried to provide first aid to Roberta. Witnesses immediately called the emergency services. When the medics arrived, they found the victim lying on the sidewalk with her head badly injured. Wounded, Roberta was barely clinging to life. They attempted to help her on the scene, but without specialized equipment, she would definitely not have survived. Therefore, she was urgently loaded into an ambulance and sent to the hospital in Vasto, Italy. The medics fought for her life on the way to the medical center. Upon arrival, Roberta was immediately taken to the surgical room for emergency surgery. Unfortunately, they were unable to save her, as her injuries were too severe. The cause of death was a craniocerebral injury due to her head hitting the pavement. Italo was also taken to the medical center. It turned out that he only sustained minor abrasions. There was no one else in his car. After treating his abrasions, Italo underwent testing for alcohol and prohibited substances in his blood. He did not refuse the examination and claimed he had not used anything. Italo expressed regret over what had happened, explaining that he had been distracted, accidentally ignored a red traffic light, and had not noticed Roberta on her small scooter. A toxicological examination confirmed that he was telling the truth. No alcohol or illegal substances were found in his blood. He behaved appropriately, reasoned calmly, was aware of the situation, and expressed remorse for what had transpired. When he was informed that the victim of the accident did not survive the collision, he burst into tears. Italo did not attempt to deny his guilt but continued to assert that it was all the result of a coincidence. Naturally, this provided little consolation for Roberta's loved ones. Her mother had been expecting to welcome her daughter home, but Roberta never arrived. She tried to call her daughter, but was unable to reach her. Eventually, she turned to Roberta's husband, who informed her about the accident. When the family received the tragic news, everyone was in shock. They blamed her death on the young man who had been inattentive behind the wheel. But none of this could bring Roberta back. 9 months before the tragedy, Roberta Smargiassi married a man named Fabio Di Lello, who was the love of her life. At the time of the fatal accident, Fabio was also 34 years old. They had known each other for many years before deciding to tie the knot. Fabio was a sporty and quite popular man, a well-known footballer who demonstrated excellent results in amateur tournaments. In 2015, he debuted in Serie D as a reserve player, and the entire family, including Roberta, was very proud of him. When they first met, Roberta worked in her father-in-law's bakery, as he owned one of the most popular bakeries in the city. After meeting Fabio, they began to build their relationship. Everyone saw their sincere love and believed that their marriage would be the best example of genuine feelings. Therefore, the tragic death of Roberta was a real blow for both families. Once all the paperwork was completed, funeral preparations began on July 3, 2016. The body was taken to the church, which was overflowing with the victim's family and friends. There were so many people that they couldn't all fit inside the building. most of them crowded outside, waiting to say goodbye to the victim of the tragedy. Roberta's funeral was conducted by the priest who had married them on October 3, 2015. At that moment, of course, no one suspected that 9 months later the woman would be back here, but this time to be buried. This accident turned Fabio's life upside down. It was obvious from the start that he was having a hard time coping with this loss. After saying goodbye to Roberta, the families did not want to accept that Roberta had been taken from them by chance, and now they were demanding retribution against her killer. The most embittered of all was Fabio. He insisted that Italo had not accidentally hit his wife, so he demanded a thorough investigation in the hope of obtaining the maximum possible punishment for him. As part of the investigation, the Carabinieri spoke to witnesses. However, no one noticed inadequate behavior or any recklessness on the road. The driver calmly maneuvered his car and did not disturb anyone. Some witnesses even claimed not to have seen Roberta, arguing that she was moving on a small scooter, which was difficult to spot. The police had footage from surveillance cameras located in 3 places at the intersection, so the moment of the accident was recorded from different angles. All the recordings were carefully analyzed. In addition, they collected footage of both participants in the accident driving before the collision. Both behaved calmly on the road and followed the rules and speed limits, at least until Italo ran a red light. Fabio still wouldn't accept this. He insisted that Italo had broken the rules and was probably under the influence of illegal substances. He completely ignored the toxicology results, which showed that everyone involved in the accident was sober. In his anger, he rallied his entire family against Italo. However, this was not difficult, considering how much everyone loved Roberta. Under Italian law, as in many other countries, an accident was punished far less severely than murder, and serious grounds were needed to classify Roberta's death as murder. Law enforcement tried to build a case, but aside from the ignored red traffic light, there was no evidence to establish the fact of murder. All of this made Fabio even angrier. On July 15, 2016, he initiated a memorial procession in honor of his deceased wife, which dozens of concerned individuals attended. He demanded that the perpetrator be brought to justice and led a torchlight procession despite the pouring rain. Hundreds of people gathered to march. They walked through the streets of Vasto, chanting slogans against the killer. Fabio himself did not mince words. Most of the participants did not want to forget Roberta and hoped to honor her memory and achieve justice for the fatal accident. However, Fabio's overly aggressive and defiant behavior puzzled many. There was something more disturbing than grief in the air. It was the real hatred that Fabio felt for Italo. Even before this memorable march, accusations and very harsh statements about Italo began to surface on social media. Italo's family perceived the dissemination of discrediting information as inappropriate. They defended Italo, insisting that in life he was completely different from how Fabio tried to portray him. They argued that Italo made a fatal mistake but did so unintentionally and was not a murderer, according to his family. All of this even attracted the attention of the prosecutor investigating Roberta's death. The aggressive Fabio was only calmed by the threat of being accused of stalking. Although he became taciturn and stopped publicly confronting Italo, he did not cease inciting those around him against Italo in daily life. Initially, this had a particularly strong impact on the families of Roberta and Fabio. At Fabio's initiative, a large poster with Roberta's image appeared on her grave, and a bench was installed at the scene of the accident, serving as a memorial. At first, dozens of relatives and friends visited the grave to honor the memory of her. Almost everyone encountered Fabio, regardless of the time they came. He could be found at the grave at any hour of the day. While others managed to contain their pain of loss, the grief-stricken husband began to behave more and more strangely. He quit his job and spent whole days at the grave of his deceased wife. In the first few days after the funeral, he came there to pray. He stayed for a couple of hours but then left. However, by the end of the first week, he was spending long hours there, then he began to stay for the entire day. Fabio even brought food with him, having lunch and dinner near the grave. His behavior began to resemble insanity. He could not come to terms with the loss of his beloved wife. He arrived as soon as the cemetery gates opened and left only before they closed. The situation worsened. Several times, he was spotted when the cemetery was already closing. At first, Fabio was stopped by the locked gates, but he began to climb over the wall. Local workers noticed that Fabio began spending the night on his wife's grave. It got to the point where he spent almost the entire day at the cemetery and refused to leave. When Fabio's relatives asked him about this, he stated that his wife's grave was the only place where he felt a connection and closeness to his late wife, as well as a semblance of peace. The rest of the time, he could not find peace, as the thought of the injustice of her death troubled him incessantly. He flatly refused to accept that Roberta was no longer alive. Relatives tried to support him, but Fabio became increasingly irritable, unpredictable. It was enough to merely mention Roberta's name, and he would explode in anger and behave aggressively. He claimed that money had not helped save Roberta, and therefore it was useless. Fabio's relatives began to fear that his mental state had deteriorated. The only consolation for him was the ongoing investigation into the accident. Fabio looked forward to the person responsible being sent to prison for a long time. That is why the events that followed unsettled him even more. A few days before Christmas, Italo's lawyer managed to find mitigating circumstances in the case. Firstly, Italo was doing volunteer work and was so socially active in this area that his efforts proved to be very beneficial. Several people spoke highly of him, stating that he had a very positive impact on their lives. Secondly, Italo had always dreamed of becoming a firefighter and serving the community. He also had no other misdemeanors, and there was no talk of a criminal record. He had not even violated traffic rules before. In addition, a thorough analysis of the video footage from the intersection showed that Roberta herself did not follow the rules. The footage revealed that she was driving without a helmet, and Italo's car was not exceeding the speed limit. He was respecting the limit despite ignoring the red traffic light. It was believed that if she had taken care of her safety and worn a helmet, the severe head injury could have been avoided, and she might have survived the collision. Fabio attended the preliminary hearing for Roberta's death hoping for justice. When he heard Italo's defense regarding mitigating circumstances, he exploded in a fit of uncontrollable rage. Several family members had to hold him back, fearing that Fabio might attack Italo. The judge took into account the mitigating circumstances presented by the defense. The lawyer's arguments sounded quite convincing, and even Roberta's relatives were unaware that she had neglected to wear a helmet. In the eyes of others, the defendant no longer appeared to be the cruel man Fabio had painted him to be. But not to Fabio, he continued to regard Italo as a monster deserving the harshest punishment. A hearing was scheduled after which everyone dispersed. Italo remained free, at least until the trial's conclusion. As Fabio left the courtroom, he glared at Italo with long, piercing hatred. After that Christmas, Fabio's relatives noticed that his grief had reached its peak. He spent several days in front of his beloved's grave, kneeling and praying almost the entire time. This time, he did not even bring food with him, which looked very alarming. When asked about food, he chuckled, saying that he did not even feel hungry. Everyone was very concerned about Fabio's mental state, but any suggestions and attempts to send him to a doctor for help ended in conflict. Roberta's mother, father, brother, and other relatives tried several times to start a conversation about going to a psychiatrist for a consultation, but to no avail. The only thing he could think about, besides his wife, was the inability of law enforcement agencies to punish the insidious criminal Italo. The main hearing was scheduled for February 21, 2017. However, after hearing Italo's lawyer's defense and the judge's reaction, Fabio didn't have much hope for a harsh sentence. Hatred had consumed him completely. He craved not just justice, but also retribution. Judging by conversations with his loved ones, he had stopped believing in justice. By the end of 2016, he had become especially withdrawn and had almost no contact with his family. If he was not at his wife's grave, he would sit in his room, locked in, and eat almost nothing. Everyone was worried about his health, completely overlooking some important circumstances. Fabio had received a firearms license 10 years before these events, and in the following years, he regularly visited the shooting range to practice shooting. What had long been a simple hobby now seemed like the only right way out. Even worse, in September 2016, Fabio legally acquired a 9mm pistol, as he had all the necessary documents and the appropriate level of training. By the end of December 2016, Fabio's parents noticed that he had radically changed the design of his social media page. He posted gloomy updates with sad thoughts and also shared a scene from the film Gladiator, where the main character returns from the war to find that his entire family has been killed. Friends assumed this was how he was processing the bitterness of his loss and found his reflection in the movie's hero. In fact, it wasn't just his sadness and desire for justice that drove him. He was now consumed by a thirst for revenge. He felt that law enforcement was not on the side of good but was instead supporting the bad guy. The slowness and inefficiency of the justice system felt like a mockery of Roberta's death. Those close to him did not believe that the once good-natured Fabio could take up arms, and the photo from the film reflected his desire for lynching. After that, he made several more posts on his page. All of them were about the search for justice, but he did not hint at or indicate what he was planning to do. These were rather abstract musings, questions that concealed something much more disturbing. On February 1, 2017, Italo went to a cafe located in Vasto, Abruzzo. He visited this place periodically to unwind, and recently he had been going there more often for obvious reasons. Italo spent a lot of time talking with friends and acquaintances. He was very upset by the tragedy involving Roberta. He repeatedly stated that he was not going to run from justice, so he was ready to accept any court decision. Now, Italo found himself at the cafe again in search of support. The upcoming hearing was set to take place in 3 weeks. The only thing that distinguished his visit to the cafe from any other day was that he ran into Fabio at the entrance. This meeting seemed strange, as Italo knew that Fabio lived on the other side of the city and that they had not crossed paths before here. They exchanged a few short phrases. Suddenly, Fabio pulled out his 9mm pistol. He caught Italo talking on his cell phone, and Italo's father was on the other end of the line. The first bullet hit Italo in the stomach, the second in the leg, and the third in the neck. He immediately fell, bleeding. His father heard his son take his last breath through the phone. The wound to the neck was fatal, the artery had been severed. Other cafe patrons rushed to the noise. Fabio immediately got into his car and fled the scene. When paramedics arrived at the cafe, they pronounced Italo dead. The Carabinieri quickly interviewed witnesses, and thanks to their statements, the shooter was soon identified. They arrived at Fabio's family home, where his relatives told them where he could be found. The Carabinieri went to Roberta's grave, expecting to find Fabio there. It was assumed that he would most likely end one's own life. A semi-automatic pistol was found in a plastic bag on the gravestone. Ballistics tests were later conducted, confirming that it was this gun that was used to shoot Italo. His father then made an official statement, convincing the public that Roberta's death was a tragic accident. Italo's father knew that his son would never intentionally harm anyone. He pointed out that Italo wouldn't even drive after drinking a beer. In his father's opinion, Italo should not have to pay for the tragic circumstances with his life, especially since Roberta herself did not take adequate care of her own safety. A few hours after the murder, Fabio was found. Before turning himself in, he called a friend, confessed that he had shot his wife's killer and was going to the cemetery to say goodbye to Roberta. At that time, he revealed why he had been so upset by his wife's death. The evening she went to visit her parents, Roberta was planning to cook a treat and share the good news that she had learned she was pregnant. Roberta was expecting a child with Fabio, and the pregnancy was still in its early stages. Until that moment, Fabio was the only one who knew about it, and he understood the full scale of the tragedy. In addition to the death of his wife in a traffic accident, he lost his child, which was a double blow for Fabio. After Italo's death, his father continued to clear his son's name from the negativity directed at him on the internet and in life. He needed to present all these arguments at the trial so that his son would not receive the same harsh punishment as real criminals who acted with malicious intent. The father believed that Fabio had acted unfairly towards his son. Fabio had created an atmosphere of hatred against Italo to such an extent that the whole country branded him as an Italian killer. In reality, according to Italo's father, he was a victim of circumstances. Italo was not evil. He took Roberta's death very hard and often shared his feelings with his father, stating that the only thing he would like to correct in his life was running a red light. Italo's father created a sort of memorial in front of the cafe where his son was shot, placing Italo's photo and candles there, visiting every day to honor his memory. Public opinion was divided on the matter. Some supported Roberta's husband, believing that Fabio had done the right thing by seeking revenge on the offender who took his wife and child. Others felt that Fabio had acted too harshly and should have waited for the court's decision. Italo would certainly have received a fair verdict. In fact, after Italo's murder, Fabio's parents expressed their condolences to his family. They revealed that they had sought medical assistance 2 days before the crime when Fabio's unpredictable behavior reached its limits. They realized that he needed qualified psychiatric help, even if it meant he would have to be committed. They noticed that his behavior was completely out of control, leading them to fear for his mental health and request his hospitalization. Unfortunately, bureaucratic obstacles and the inertia of the system prevented this from happening in time. If Fabio's parents' appeal had been successful and he had been hospitalized immediately, perhaps a second tragedy could have been avoided. On February 4, 2017, Italo's coffin was present at the Vasto Church. The funeral was attended by numerous friends and family members. The ceremony was led by the same priest who had previously addressed Roberta's unexpected passing. Aware of the tragic events, he encouraged everyone present to act with kindness and respect towards one another. He urged attendees to refrain from expressing hatred, especially on social media. During this challenging time, the priest hoped to foster unity and put an end to further violence. Rather than a hearing about Roberta's death, which was stopped because the accused had died, Fabio found himself in court facing a charge of first-degree murder. His lawyer tried to argue that Fabio had not planned the crime and sought to lessen his responsibility due to his serious mental health problems. This defense could have helped him avoid a life sentence. However, the prosecutor provided strong evidence against this claim. On March 24, 2017, the court convicted Fabio Di Lello and sentenced him to 30 years in prison. The lawyer highlighted the significant decline in the client's mental health following the death of his cherished wife. He struggled to handle her loss, and timely support was lacking. The lawyer submitted an appeal, leading to further evaluations. On July 10, 2018, the appellate court shortened the prison sentence to 20 years, citing a diagnosis of an acute mental disorder for Fabio during the attack. However, the prosecution was dissatisfied with this ruling and requested that the original 30-year sentence be reinstated. On November 13, 2019, the Court of Cassation dismissed the appeals. Consequently, the 20-year prison sentence became official and final. Initially, Fabio faced significant challenges during his imprisonment. He received regular support from a psychiatrist and a priest because of his high risk of ending one's own life. Over time, however, he began to improve and the risk diminished. Fabio remains in prison and is scheduled for release in 2037.
Stacy DeGrandchamp, a 17-year-old high school student from Fort Wayne, dreamed of attending Ball State University to pursue a career in computer technology. As an only child raised by a single mother, Stacy was described as confident, beautiful, and popular. However, her popularity often led to jealousy from others. On August 15, 2002, Stacy attended a party with approximately 20 people. Tragically, the night took a devastating turn when a fight broke out outside the house, leaving Stacy severely injured. She was rushed to the hospital but passed away shortly after. It took 17 years to solve the case, as witnesses were initially unwilling to come forward. In the spring of 2002, Stacy met Brandon Muff, a recent graduate of Fort Wayne High School, at a party. Brandon, who was in his early 20s, had a rebellious bad boy persona that Stacy found irresistible. She quickly fell for him and started spending time with his circle of friends. This group included girls Amanda Richards, Whitney McGee, and Holly Boisvert, who often hosted gatherings at Holly's house. Her home, which included a pool, became a popular hangout spot as her father gave the teens free rein. While Stacy appeared to fit in with the group, her presence reignited old tensions between her and Holly. The conflict between Stacy and Holly traced back to middle school. At an 8th grade pool party at Holly's house, she had mocked and splashed Stacy in front of others, causing Stacy to leave the gathering embarrassed. Although the two seem to have made up over time, old grudges resurface when Stacy joins Holly's group of friends as Brandon's girlfriend. Holly had previously dated Brandon, and while their relationship had ended, she still had lingering feelings for him. Stacy's budding romance with Brandon upset Holly, leading to renewed friction. However, this time Stacy did not let herself be intimidated like before. By the summer of 2002, the tension between Stacy and Holly had escalated. Holly began spreading rumors about Stacy, turning others in the group against her. At the same time, Stacy's relationship with Brandon started to unravel. Realizing she was on the wrong path, Stacy made a pivotal decision just weeks before her senior year of high school. She broke up with Brandon, distanced herself from his crowd, and began focusing on her future. She cut ties with most of the group, apart from a new friend she had made that summer, Abby Oswald. Determined to turn her life around, Stacy began preparing for the college years ahead. Abby, a friend of Brandon, met Stacy through him. On August 15, 2002, they spent the day together. They decided to go to the mall, as Abby was shopping for a prom outfit. Later, Abby suggested they attend a party at Brandon's house, where he lived with his roommate, Justin. Stacy was hesitant at first, but Abby convinced her to go. Around 9:30 p.m., they arrived at the house. Shortly before 11 p.m., the Fort Wayne Police Department, along with firefighters and paramedics, responded to a 911 call from the Guthrie Street area. Earlier, in the early evening, the police were called due to complaints about loud music and a small party. However, they left without further intervention. This time, when emergency responders arrived, they found a young woman lying in the driveway, bleeding from her chest. She was rushed to a trauma center in Fort Wayne, but her injuries proved fatal. Abby later explained to detectives what had transpired. When she and Stacy arrived at the party, Brandon and a woman, Holly, were sitting together on the porch. Stacy confronted Holly, questioning her presence. The argument quickly escalated into a physical fight. They pulled each other's hair, punched, kicked, and rolled on the grass. At one point during the fight, Stacy gained the upper hand and kicked Holly in the head or face. Suddenly, Stacy appeared to lose strength and went limp. At that moment, Brandon intervened. He grabbed Stacy by her ankles and dragged her toward the trash cans. Once in the yard, she managed to stand up and stagger down the driveway, but only a few seconds later, she passed out. Brandon went to check on her, lifted her shirt, and noticed that her bra was soaked in blood. That was when they called 911. Both Holly and Brandon were taken to the police station for questioning. Forensic experts arrived at the scene and taped off the area. They began taking photos and videos of the crime scene. Since Stacy was bleeding from the chest, investigators suspected that a weapon had been used. However, no sharp objects or knives were found in the backyard or driveway. After obtaining a search warrant, detectives entered the house and seized several kitchen knives from the table. Meanwhile, at the hospital, doctors worked in the operating room to save Stacy's life. She had a stab wound to her upper chest and another to her abdomen. Despite their efforts, she succumbed to her injuries. With her death ruled a homicide, the Fort Wayne police began an official investigation. At the station, Holly provided her version of events. She claimed she had no part in Stacy's injuries, stating that they had only argued and fought. Holly denied having a knife and suggested that Stacy might have fallen onto glass in the trash can. Brandon was also interviewed, and his blood-stained shirt was collected as evidence. He claimed he had pulled Stacy by her ankles to break up the fight but didn't realize how hard he had been pulling. He also suggested that she might have been injured by broken glass from the trash can. However, Holly and Brandon's statements didn't align with the evidence. Photos of the crime scene showed no broken glass in or around the trash cans. Moreover, there was no blood near them. The coroner's report confirmed that Stacy's injuries were caused by a sharp knife blade, as they were clearly stab wounds. Nevertheless, no knife was found at the scene or on Holly and Brandon at the time. They were then released, but the investigation into Stacy's death remained ongoing. On August 19, 2002, Stacy was laid to rest, dressed in the outfit she had planned to wear for her prom photo. Her funeral was crowded, with many of her friends from parties attending: Abby, Whitney, and Amanda. Notably absent was Holly, but Brandon attended, drawing everyone's attention. His presence surprised many, as rumors were swirling at Wayne High School that he and his friends had manipulated Stacy into attending the party where Holly could confront her. This raised suspicions among investigators about whether the incident was a premeditated plot by Holly to harm Stacy. Following Stacy's death, Holly became a social outcast as most people believed she was responsible. However, another rumor implicated Whitney. A few days before Stacy's death, Whitney had left a message on Stacy's answering machine, advising her to be careful. When a detective questioned Whitney about the message, she insisted it wasn't a threat but rather a warning. Whitney claimed she knew Holly wanted to pick a fight with Stacy and hoped to prevent the two from encountering each other. While Whitney may have been trying to keep Stacy and Holly apart, Brandon seemed to do the opposite. Whitney revealed to detectives that Brandon had called Holly on August 15 and pressured her to attend the party, warning her that if she didn't come, he would never speak to her again. Investigators began considering whether he had orchestrated the situation to provoke a confrontation between Holly and Stacy. She had just broken up with Brandon, which had hurt his self-esteem. Detectives speculate that revenge, combined with Holly's jealousy, may have led to Stacy's death. Abby, Stacy's new friend, played a significant role in convincing her to attend the party. Abby encouraged Stacy to go because she was friends with Brandon. Investigators later questioned Abby's motives, wondering why she would push Stacy to attend the party at the Guthrie Street house when Holly might be there. They suspected that she could have been involved in a plan to put Stacy in harm's way. However, Abby denied any involvement and claimed that she had actually tried to stop the fight that occurred that night. The investigation eventually shifted its focus to Brandon, leading detectives to speak with his roommate, Justin. On August 26, Justin was interviewed by law enforcement and became a key witness. He stated that when he had tried to break up the fight between Stacy and Holly, Brandon had stopped him and told him to let them fight, as if Brandon had been enjoying the confrontation. He also revealed that Brandon later asked him to tell the police that Holly hadn't done anything and that Stacy had simply fallen. This statement made detectives extremely suspicious. They believed Brandon might know important details but was either too scared to share them or deliberately trying to hinder their investigation. Brandon was questioned again, but during his second interview, he refused to provide any new information. He claimed he wasn't a snitch and denied seeing Holly with a knife. Detectives were convinced that Holly was responsible for the crime, but no witnesses were willing to admit they had seen anything, and no murder weapon was ever found. Without these crucial pieces of evidence, the authorities were unable to charge or arrest anyone. As time passed, weeks, months, and eventually years, the case went cold. 17 years after Stacy's death, no one had been held accountable, and no progress had been made in solving the case. It remained unsolved, leaving everyone involved frustrated and confused. Stacy's cousin, Jamie McMillan, refused to let the case fade into obscurity. Determined to find justice, Jamie reached out to Detective Brian Martin, who specialized in unsolved cases. In March 2019, Jamie urged Detective Martin to revisit the case. She suggested interviewing Brandon, Holly, Abby, and Amanda again, hoping that, with the passage of time, the witnesses might be more willing to talk and share the truth. Everyone who had attended the party that night was now older, and perhaps they had reflected on their lives and would finally provide new information that could advance the investigation. Detective Martin begins questioning Abby, who continues to deny ever seeing the knife, just as she did 17 years ago. Next, he interviewed Brandon, who appeared deeply remorseful and admitted the incident had weighed on him for years. However, Brandon also stated that he couldn't recall seeing Holly with a knife. About a month later, Detective Martin located Holly in Wisconsin. Holly was initially hesitant to open the door, but when she eventually did, Detective Martin introduced himself and explained that he was investigating an unsolved case. Holly turned visibly pale. When the detective asked whether she remembered the party, their conversation quickly revealed some surprising details. During their discussion, Holly repeatedly referred to Stacy as her friend. Holly admitted they had been difficult teenage girls, but Stacy was still her friend. She firmly stated that she would never intentionally harm Stacy or threaten Stacy with a knife. She then admitted that she had owned a folding knife at the time and usually carried it for protection. When the detective asked if she had the knife with her during the fight with Stacy, Holly left the room and returned with the very same knife in hand. Detective Martin was shocked. He believed it could potentially be the weapon that had eluded investigators for 17 years. Back in Fort Wayne, Detective Martin began gathering additional information. Although initial test results showed that Stacy's DNA was not found on Holly's knife, the detective conducted further analysis. He later consulted Dr. Wagner, the chief pathologist on the case, who reviewed Stacy's autopsy photos. Wagner concluded that the knife was consistent with the stab wounds Stacy had suffered. On March 25, 2020, Holly, who was now 33 years old, was arrested. After years of silence, Amanda, a friend and the main witness, finally decided to speak up. She had been with Holly the night of the party and revealed that Holly had a knife with her that evening. She recalled Holly bringing the knife along when they arrived at the house and asking Amanda to hold it in her purse. Later, as she and another friend, Whitney, were preparing to leave, Holly asked for the knife back. Amanda saw nothing unusual about this and handed it over. As Amanda and Whitney were leaving, Stacy arrived at the house. Although Amanda remained silent for nearly 2 decades, her testimony could have helped the police solve the case much sooner. With Amanda's statement and additional evidence, authorities were able to reconstruct the incident leading up to Stacy's death. At the center of this tragic story was Brandon, a former graduate of Fort Wayne High School. He was the quintessential bad boy and, despite his flaws, attracted Stacy. Their relationship marked a turning point in Stacy's life, as she became involved with Brandon's social circle, a group known for their partying. Holly, who had dated Brandon before Stacy, still harbored feelings for him. Her lingering affection, coupled with Brandon's manipulative tendencies, deepened her resentment toward Stacy. He enjoyed the attention and often fostered rivalry between Holly and Stacy, which fueled his ego. This animosity came to a head on August 15, 2002. Stacy had received an invitation to a party despite her friends' concerns about its location. She chose to attend anyway. When she arrived, she found Holly with Brandon, further escalating the tension. An argument broke out and quickly turned violent. When Holly realized she was losing the fight, she stabbed Stacy twice with the knife. After years of investigation and consultation with Stacy's family, the Allen County Circuit Court offered Holly a plea bargain. She confessed to stabbing Stacy, which caused Stacy's death, and insisted that neither Brandon nor anyone else was involved. She acted alone. On January 14, 2022, Holly Boisvert was sentenced to 25 years in prison as part of the plea agreement, with 5 years suspended and 3 years of probation. Accounting for the time she has already served in credits for good behavior, she could be released as early as 2030. The tragic case of Dr. Teresa Sievers, a story that illustrates how love can transform into betrayal and how greed can lead to horrific violence. How did a dedicated mother and accomplished doctor become the target of a murder scheme? What concealed truths were hidden behind closed doors? Let's delve into this story. Dr. Teresa Sievers was a physician dedicated to her patients. She graduated from Ross University School of Medicine in 1996 and opened her practice in Bonita Springs, Florida. Teresa focused on integrating traditional and alternative medicine to help patients who had run out of other treatment options. Her husband, Mark Sievers, worked as the office manager in her practice. They married in 2003 and had 2 daughters. Mark was initially seen as a supportive husband, but his behavior came under investigation after Teresa's murder. Financial difficulties faced by the family played a significant role in the subsequent events. The conspiracy to murder Dr. Teresa Sievers began at the wedding of Curtis Wainwright in May 2015. Mark, who was a guest, confided in Wright about his mental health struggles and his fear that Teresa would take their children away from him. Mark expressed his wish for Teresa to be killed, driven by financial motives concerning her life insurance policies with a total value of $4,433 million. He thought that her death would resolve his problems and provide the financial security he needed. Although initially hesitant, Wright eventually agreed to help Mark, stating that he could deal with the matter in exchange for a share of the insurance payout. Unbeknownst to Mark, Wright then enlisted the help of a third man to assist in the murder, Jimmy Ray Rogers, whom Wright had paid to help him. During his trial, Wright described Rogers as a violent individual with a background involving other murders, suggesting that he was well suited for the violent act against Teresa. Mark outlined two possible plans for carrying out the murder. The first plan involved killing Teresa at her home on June 28 and making it look like a burglary. To get ready for this, Mark checked how to access their property by climbing over the backyard fence and trimming bushes to clear a path to the garage. He also coached Wright on how to enter the house and disable the security system. The second plan proposed by Mark was to murder Teresa at her medical office on June 29, disguising it as a mugging. He provided Wright with aerial photos of the office, pointing out a hidden stairwell that Teresa often used when leaving late at night. Mark also shared the access codes for this stairwell with Wright, stressing that no matter where the murder happened, it should appear to be a robbery or burglary. On June 28, 2015, Dr. Teresa returned to her home in Bonita Springs, Florida, after abruptly ending a family vacation in upstate New York. She arrived at Southwest Florida International Airport, where security cameras recorded her pulling her suitcase through the terminal. After calling her husband Mark to let him know she was safe, Teresa got into her car and drove home. Unbeknownst to her, two men were already inside her house, waiting to carry out a deadly plan devised by her own husband. Inside the house, Wright and Rogers were lying in wait. Wright had grabbed the hammer from the garage earlier. They had planned this situation carefully over several weeks. When Teresa entered the kitchen, Wright attacked her from behind and struck Teresa once on the head. Shocked by the surprise attack, she turned to face him but received another blow. The violence quickly escalated as Rogers also joined the assault with his own hammer. Together, they violently attacked Teresa, hitting her repeatedly until she collapsed on the floor in a pool of blood. Witnesses later recounted how Teresa fought back, instinctively raising her hands to shield herself from the strikes. Despite her brave attempts to defend herself, she suffered a total of 17 wounds to her head before the kitchen fell silent. Once they were sure Teresa was dead, Wright and Rogers left the scene without triggering the alarm system, which they had previously disabled based on information from Mark. The murder was carried out quickly and left no immediate signs of forced entry, as they had used an unlocked side door to enter. After committing their crime, Wright and Rogers returned to Missouri in their rental car, thinking they had successfully hidden their actions. Meanwhile, Mark received worrying news on the morning of June 29. His wife, Dr. Teresa, had not shown up for work. Worried about Teresa not being around, Mark called a family friend, Dr. Mark Petrites, to check on her at home. Using the garage code Mark provided, Dr. Petrites entered the home and discovered Teresa lying face down in a pool of blood, with a hammer next to her body. She was cold to the touch, and there were evident signs of a violent struggle. The brutal murder of Dr. Teresa shocked the Bonita Springs community. As a respected physician and mother, her death left many people in disbelief. Friends and patients expressed horror over the violent act against someone who had devoted her life to helping others, marking a tragic loss for the community. After Teresa was found dead, law enforcement launched an investigation. Detectives interviewed her family, friends, colleagues to learn more about her life and any possible threats. They also sought tips from the community, stressing the importance of any information that could help identify the person responsible. Investigators examined various aspects of Teresa's professional and personal life. Initially, they looked into people who had interacted with her or might have held grudges against her, but they did not find any immediate leads. Nearly 2 months later, a major breakthrough occurred when law enforcement received a tip from a source in Missouri. This tip revealed that Wright had confessed to someone about his role in Teresa's murder. Consequently, detectives concentrated their efforts on Wright. They traveled to Missouri to investigate further and gather evidence linking him to the crime. In August 2015, Wright and his accomplice, Rogers, were arrested in Missouri for their involvement in Teresa's murder. Many were surprised by the arrest since neither man was from the local area. A detailed investigation revealed important evidence linking them to the crime. Police carried out search warrants at their homes and collected various items, including clothing and other materials that had been purchased shortly before Teresa's death. The investigation gained traction after detectives received a tip that directed them to Wright. This led to a deeper look into his relationship with Mark, raising suspicions about their possible participation in a murder-for-hire plot. The evidence collected during the arrest was crucial for the trials of both men involved. Initially, Wright denied having any connection to Teresa's murder during police questioning. However, as investigators presented him with evidence, he eventually admitted his involvement. Wright acknowledged that he agreed to carry out the murder for at least $100,000 from Teresa's life insurance policy. In December 2015, Wright accepted a plea deal with prosecutors to avoid a possible capital murder charge. As part of the plea agreement, he confessed to his involvement in the murder and agreed to testify against his co-defendants, Mark Sievers and Jimmy Ray Rogers. In return for his cooperation, he received a 25-year prison sentence for second-degree murder. This deal required him to provide significant assistance to the prosecution in their cases against Mark and Rogers. Wright confessed that he and Rogers traveled from Missouri to Florida with the intention of killing Teresa as part of a plan created by Mark. He revealed that Mark first presented this idea during his wedding in May 2015, citing his financial struggles and the need to eliminate Teresa as a solution. This confession was crucial in proving Mark's direct role in the murder plot. By cooperating with law enforcement, Wright played a key role in the investigation, shedding light on the conspiracy that led to Teresa's tragic death. The investigation uncovered a series of text messages exchanged between Mark and Wright, which clearly outlined their plan to murder Teresa for financial gain and highlighted Mark's direct involvement in organizing the crime. Prosecutors claimed that Mark hired Wright and Rogers to kill Teresa due to financial pressures and fears of losing custody of their daughters. Court documents released during this time revealed serious issues in Mark and Teresa's marriage, such as financial struggles and possible infidelity. The evidence showed that Mark could benefit significantly from Teresa's life insurance policies. On December 4, 2015, shortly after Teresa's funeral, Mark was arrested. He was taken into custody by law enforcement from the Lee County Sheriff's Office. As investigators worked to reconstruct the timeline of events leading up to Teresa's murder, they became confident that they had enough evidence to charge him with first-degree murder. Mark's arrest shifted the case's focus onto him as a key figure in the conspiracy. Initially cooperative with investigators, he started to distance himself as more evidence against him was gathered, resulting in a complicated legal battle. After Mark was arrested, investigators stepped up their efforts to gather more evidence regarding the murder of Dr. Teresa. A key part of this investigation was examining digital evidence, especially GPS data from the rental car. This GPS information provided a detailed record of their route and was essential for creating a timeline of their activities before the murder. The data showed they left Missouri, arriving in Bonita Springs, Florida. Wright even posted a Yelp review for a dumpling restaurant along the way. The GPS device was also linked to an email address belonging to Jimmy Ray Rogers, a close friend of Wright's who had his own criminal record. Surveillance footage from a Florida Walmart showed both men in the area at the time of Teresa's murder. The exact timestamps indicated they reached the Sievers' home around 6 a.m., which matched the timeline of Teresa's murder. Additionally, investigators reviewed cell phone records that showed communication between Mark and Wright. These records revealed regular contact leading up to the murder. The fact that Mark and Wright used prepaid phones indicated they were trying to avoid detection, but investigators managed to trace their communications effectively. This digital evidence was crucial in supporting witness testimonies and clarifying how the murder was plotted and carried out. As trial preparations began, prosecutors focused on assembling a solid case against both Curtis Wayne Wright, Mark Sievers, and Jimmy Ray Rogers. A key piece of evidence emerged from surveillance footage at a Walmart, where Wright and Rogers were recorded buying items later connected to the murder of Dr. Teresa. The video showed them shopping without attempting to hide their identities while purchasing trash bags, flushable wet wipes, black towels, and a lock-picking kit. These purchases were crucial in proving their intention to commit murder and to dispose of the evidence afterward. Additionally, investigators found fibers from a blue jumpsuit that Rogers had discarded along Highway 47 in Missouri. Forensic analysis showed that these fibers matched those on Teresa's clothing at the crime scene, providing a direct connection between Rogers and the murder. This physical evidence strengthened the prosecution's case by confirming that both men were present during the crime. The prosecution collected digital evidence, including GPS data from the rental car driven by Wright and Rogers, surveillance footage, and forensic findings, built a strong case against the defendants. As the trial dates approached, the prosecution prepared to present this evidence, aiming to prove not only the guilt of Wright and Rogers but also to show Mark's role in planning his wife's murder. After Jimmy Ray Rogers was convicted, Mark Sievers faced trial in December 2019. The prosecution prepared a case that relied significantly on the testimony of Curtis Wayne Wright, who had accepted a plea deal. Wright provided essential information about how Mark orchestrated the murder plot, shedding light on the conspiracy that resulted in Teresa's death. During the trial, prosecutors presented various pieces of evidence linking Mark to the crime. This included text messages exchanged between Mark and Wright that discussed the murder and the financial motivations behind it. The prosecution argued that Mark's desire for financial gain from Teresa's life insurance policies was a primary motive for orchestrating her murder. The defense argued that there was no reliable evidence linking Mark to the murder. They pointed out that the state had only established that Wright and Rogers, not Mark, were responsible for Teresa's death. To weaken Wright's testimony, the defense highlighted his criminal history, which included several felony convictions and mental health issues, such as bipolar disorder. They claimed that Wright had a reason to lie in order to get a lighter sentence for himself. Furthermore, the defense suggested that Wright might have been influenced by law enforcement during his questioning, implying he was just repeating a story given to him by the investigator. They also noted that Wright had not taken a polygraph test, which could have either supported or damaged his credibility as a witness. The defense wrapped up its arguments by asking jurors to doubt the credibility of Wright's statements and to note the absence of direct evidence connecting Mark to the crime. Throughout the trial, jurors were shown consistent forensic evidence, such as fibers from a blue jumpsuit discarded by Rogers that matched those found on Teresa's body. Despite this, the defense continued to argue that Mark was not involved in either planning or carrying out the murder. The prosecution effectively showed that Mark had not only planned the murder but had also enlisted Wright and Rogers to help carry it out. After a brief deliberation of about 4 hours, the jury found Mark Sievers guilty of first-degree premeditated murder and conspiracy to commit murder. After the verdict, Mark entered the sentencing phase, where jurors would decide on his punishment. This decision depended on whether they identified aggravating factors that justified a death sentence or mitigating circumstances that could lead to a lesser penalty. Mark was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, and the sentencing phase began on December 11, 2019, shortly after the verdict was announced. The prosecution aimed to prove two main aggravating factors: that the murder was executed in a cold, calculated, premeditated way, and that it was motivated by financial gain. They presented evidence from the trial, including Wright's testimony about Mark's role in planning the murder and the financial incentives involved. Victim impact statements were also shared to illustrate the emotional effects of Teresa's murder on her family and community. The defense sought to provide evidence that would reduce Mark's culpability by emphasizing his lack of a criminal history and his relationships with his daughters. Family members testified about his role as a father and husband, painting a positive picture of him. However, they struggled to counter the strong evidence put forth by the prosecution. On January 3, 2020, after careful consideration, the jury unanimously recommended the death penalty for Mark Sievers. They concluded that the evidence showed he had committed the murder with cold, calculated premeditation, although they found insufficient evidence for the claim that he acted for financial gain. During the sentencing hearing, Mark spoke to the court, insisting on his innocence, expressing his love for Teresa and their daughters. He pleaded for mercy, asking to avoid the death penalty. Despite his pleas and the defense's arguments for a lighter sentence, Judge Bruce Kyle sentenced him to death for orchestrating Teresa's murder. The judge highlighted the importance of the jury's recommendation and pointed out that Mark's actions showed a complete disregard for human life. In addition to the death sentence for first-degree murder, he received a 30-year prison sentence for conspiracy to commit murder, which will be served consecutively. The sentencing phase is complete, and Mark Sievers is now dealing with major legal hurdles as he prepares to appeal his conviction and his sentence. Currently, he is on death row at the Union Correctional Institution in Florida while these appeals are underway. After his sentencing, Mark has consistently claimed his innocence, insisting that he did not arrange the murder of his wife, Teresa. Mark remains on death row, but continues to protest the verdict. In February 2025, a judge granted him an evidentiary hearing, which will determine whether he is granted a new trial. The tragic case of Dr. Teresa Sievers is a heartbreaking tale of betrayal and greed, a testament to how love and trust can be corrupted by dark motives. A devoted mother and a talented physician, Teresa became the victim of a murder plot orchestrated by the husband she once trusted. Secrets kept behind closed doors, combined with financial pressures and moral turpitude, led to a tragic end that took the life of a precious human being and left indelible pain for her family, friends, and the Bonita Springs community. The case not only exposed the brutality of the crime, but also served as a sobering reminder of the consequences of greed and a lack of compassion. While Mark Sievers faces a death sentence and continues to appeal, Teresa's story remains a reminder that justice, even when served, cannot fully undo the damage caused by crime.